When a billionaire CEO offers you a contract marriage to save your dying daughter, you don't ask questions, you sign. But Ethan Cole should have read the fine print. Vivian Cross didn't build an empire by being kind. She built it by being calculated. And when she needed a convenient husband to secure her inheritance, she chose the one man desperate enough to say yes, her company's exhausted janitor. 1 year, no feelings, no questions, just survival. But some contracts can't contain what happens when two broken people stop pretending. If you want to see how a fake marriage becomes the realest thing either of them has ever known, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Providence General Hospital's billing office hummed with the same cold indifference as the woman behind the desk. Ethan Cole sat with his daughter Lily's hand clasped in his, her small fingers impossibly fragile against his calloused palm. The medical bills spread across the desk might as well have been a death sentence written in numbers he couldn't afford. "Mr. Cole, we've been more than patient." The billing coordinator's voice carried the practiced sympathy of someone who delivered bad news 40 times a day. "But we need to discuss payment arrangements for Lily's treatment. The transplant surgery alone is $340,000. And with the post-operative care, I know the number." Ethan's voice came out rougher than he intended. He'd memorized every digit, every impossible zero. The number lived in his head, a constant drumbeat drowning out everything else. $340,000, plus the $87,000 still owed from Sarah's cancer treatment 2 years ago, plus rent, plus everything else that came with keeping a 7-year-old alive. Lily squeezed his hand. She was too thin, her skin too pale, her eyes too knowing for a child who should have been worrying about second-grade homework, not kidney failure. She'd inherited her mother's delicate features and dark curls, but where Sarah had been vibrant and full of light, Lily was fading. 6 months, the doctors had said. Maybe 8 if they were lucky. Without a transplant, his daughter would die before she turned 8. "I'm working on it," Ethan said, hating how hollow the words sounded. "I just need more time." "Mr. Cole, you're already 4 months behind on the existing debt. Unless you can provide proof of insurance or establish a concrete payment plan." "I said I'm working on it." He stood abruptly, pulling Lily up with him. The chair scraped against linoleum with a sound like a scream. "Thank you for your time." Outside, the October air bit with early cold. Ethan zipped Lily's jacket up to her chin, his hands shaking slightly, not from the temperature, from the weight of knowing he was failing her. Every day, failing her a little more. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was small. "Are we going home?" Home. The word was generous for the one-bedroom apartment in Riverside that smelled like mold and had heat that worked maybe 3 days a week. But it was all he could afford on a janitor's salary, and even that was one late payment away from eviction. The notice had come yesterday. Pink paper, official seal, 30 days to pay or vacate. "Yeah, sweetheart, we're going home." He lifted her onto his shoulders, ignoring the protest of his back. He'd been up since 4 a.m., worked his shift at Cross Industries' downtown tower, then rushed to make Lily's appointment. His body felt like it belonged to someone twice his age. He was 32. They caught the bus because his car had died 3 weeks ago, and he couldn't afford to fix it. Lily fell asleep against his shoulder during the 40-minute ride, her breath warm against his neck. Ethan stared out the window at the city passing by. Expensive restaurants he'd never eat in, boutiques selling single items that cost more than his monthly rent. People in business suits talking on phones about deals and meetings and things that mattered in their world. He'd been one of them once. Different life. Different person. Before Sarah got sick and the medical bills started coming. Before he'd maxed out every credit card, drained their savings, sold everything they owned. Before he'd lost his engineering job because he'd missed too many days sitting in hospital waiting rooms. Before the only work he could find was night shift janitorial at Cross Industries, mopping floors in the building where he used to have an office. The bus lurched to a stop. Ethan carried Lily the 3 blocks to their apartment, up 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again. Inside, the space was clean but sparse. He'd sold the furniture months ago. They slept on a mattress on the floor, ate on lawn chairs at a card table. But the walls had pictures Lily had drawn, and the kitchen had food, and he'd kept it warm enough that she didn't shiver at night. Small victories. They were all he had left. He tucked Lily into bed, pulled the blankets up to her chin. She stirred, opened her eyes halfway. "Daddy, are you going to work?" "Yeah, baby, but Mrs. Chen is going to check on you, okay? And I'll be back before you wake up." "Promise?" "Promise." He kissed her forehead, lingered a moment to memorize the feel of it. Just in case. Every night now was just in case. Mrs. Chen from 4B knocked quietly at 9 p.m. She was 78, survived on Social Security, but she never refused when Ethan asked her to listen for Lily. He paid her what he could, which wasn't enough, but she never complained. "You look terrible," she said, studying his face. "When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." Liar. But her eyes were kind. "Go. I'll be here." The night shift at Cross Industries started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. Ethan clocked in at 9:47, grabbed his cart of supplies, and headed for the executive floors. This was where the real money lived. Corner offices with views that cost more per month than most people made in a year. Conference rooms with leather chairs and crystal water pitchers. Bathrooms with marble sinks and automatic soap dispensers. Ethan cleaned them all. He worked alone, which he preferred. No one to make small talk with. No one to ask questions. Just him and the vacuum and the chemical smell of industrial cleaner. The executive floor was usually empty by the time he arrived. All the important people gone home to their important lives. Usually. Tonight, the light was on in the corner office. The big one. The one with the name that made other executives whisper, Vivian Cross. Ethan had seen her exactly 3 times in the 8 months he'd worked here. Twice from a distance, crossing the lobby in designer suits that probably cost more than his annual salary. Once up close when he'd been cleaning the executive bathroom and she'd walked in, stopped, stared at him for exactly 3 seconds, then turned and walked out without a word. She hadn't looked at him like he was a person. She'd looked at him like he was furniture that had been placed incorrectly. Now her light was on at 11:30 p.m. and Ethan needed to clean her office. He considered skipping it, coming back later. But he was behind on his route already, and Jenkins, the supervisor, was looking for excuses to fire people. Ethan couldn't afford to give him one. He knocked softly. No answer. He knocked again, slightly louder. "Come in." The voice was cold, clipped, used to being obeyed. Ethan pushed his cart inside. Vivian Cross sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black marble. Her office was all sharp lines and expensive art, the kind of space that told you exactly how important she was. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed the city lights like a kingdom laid out for inspection. She was bent over a laptop, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a style that was probably called something in fashion magazines, features that were striking in a way that made you forget to breathe for a second. She didn't look up. "I'll be quick," Ethan said. "Just need to empty the trash and—" "You're the janitor." It wasn't a question. She still hadn't looked at him. "Yes, ma'am." "How long have you worked here?" Strange question. 8 months? And before that? Ethan hesitated. Different job. What kind of job? Does it matter? That made her look up. Her eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds. They studied him with an intensity that made him want to step back. "I don't appreciate evasion. What kind of job?" "Structural engineer?" The words came out defensive. "I worked in the Riverside office, got laid off during the recession." "Laid off?" She repeated the words like she was testing them for truth. "Yet you're working as a janitor in the building where you used to have a career." "It's called survival." "Is it?" Something flickered across her face, too quick to read. "Or is it giving up?" The words hit like a slap. Ethan's hands tightened on the handle of his cart. "With respect, ma'am, you don't know anything about my life. I know you're working night shift janitorial despite having an engineering degree. I know you're exhausted. I can see it in your face. I know you're desperate because no one takes this job unless they're out of options." She leaned back in her chair, still studying him. "What I don't know is why. That's personal. Everything is personal, Mr. Cole. That's what people forget. She closed her laptop. I need you to sit down. I'm working. Sit down. Her voice could have frozen water. Ethan sat. His heart was pounding now, a sick fear building in his chest. This was it. Whatever this was, it was the thing that would break him. He could feel it. Vivian stood, walked to the window, her back to him. She was tall, probably 5'10" in the heels that clicked against the marble floor. I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room. If you repeat it, I will destroy you financially and legally. Do you understand? Yes. His mouth was dry. My father built Cross Industries into what it is today. When he died 6 months ago, he left controlling interest to me, with conditions. She paused. I have to be married within 1 year of his death, or control passes to my brother Marcus. Ethan said nothing. He had no idea where this was going. Marcus is an idiot and a sadist. He would drive this company into the ground within 5 years while enriching himself. I can't let that happen. Which means I need a husband. She turned to face him. I need you to be that husband. The words didn't make sense. Ethan stared at her, waiting for the punchline. I'm sorry, what? 1 year, contract marriage. Completely legal, completely documented. You move into my home, attend necessary social functions, maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. In exchange, I pay off all your debts. My debts? $427,000 in medical bills and credit card debt. Lily's transplant surgery fully funded, post-operative care fully funded, plus a salary of $200,000 for the year. She said it like she was discussing the weather. After 1 year, we divorce quietly. You walk away with a clean slate and enough money to start over. Ethan couldn't breathe. The number was impossible. The offer was impossible. Why me? Because you're desperate enough to say yes and smart enough to keep your mouth shut. Because you have no family to complicate things. I'm sorry about your wife, by the way. Because you're presentable enough that people will believe I might actually marry you. She crossed her arms. And because your daughter is dying, and you will do anything to save her. That kind of motivation makes you reliable. The casual way she said it, your daughter is dying, made him want to punch something. This is insane. This is business. This is illegal. Marriage fraud is only illegal if we get caught. We won't. My lawyers are excellent. She walked back to her desk, pulled out a folder. The contract is here. Standard prenuptial agreement, non-disclosure clauses, termination conditions. You'll have 48 hours to review it. If you agree, we'll be married by the end of the month. Ethan stood, his legs shaky. I don't know what kind of person you think I am. I think you're a father who would sell his soul to save his daughter. I'm offering you a better deal. She held out the folder. Take it. Read it. Think about Lily lying in that hospital bed. Think about the bills you can't pay. Think about what happens when she runs out of time and you're still out of options. He didn't take the folder. There are other ways. No, there aren't. You've exhausted them all. That's why you're here, cleaning my office at midnight. Her voice softened, just slightly. I'm not a good person, Mr. Cole. I'm not offering this out of kindness. I'm offering it because I need something, and you need something, and we can help each other. That's all this is. That's all this is, he repeated numbly. Yes. What if I say no? Then you say no. I find someone else, your daughter dies, life goes on. She set the folder on the edge of her desk. But you won't say no, because you can't. We both know that. She was right. God help him. She was right. Ethan took the folder. His hands were shaking. I need to think about it. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires. She sat back down, opened her laptop. Dismissed. You can finish cleaning now. He stood there for a moment, the folder heavy in his hands. A year of his life. Selling himself to save his daughter. How was that different from what he'd already been doing? Working himself to death for pennies. Watching Lily fade a little more every day. Pretending he had options when they both knew the truth. Why are you really doing this? He asked quietly. Vivian looked up. For just a moment, something human flickered across her face. Exhaustion. Loneliness. The weight of carrying something too heavy for one person. Because I'm desperate too, she said. We're just desperate for different things. Ethan didn't remember cleaning the rest of the offices. He worked on autopilot, his mind spinning through the impossibility of what had just happened. The folder sat in his cart like a bomb, waiting to explode his life into something unrecognizable. He finished his shift at 6 a.m., clocked out, caught the early bus home. Mrs. Chen was asleep in his chair, her reading glasses crooked on her face. He covered her with a blanket, then went to check on Lily. She was awake, sitting up in bed, drawing. She did that sometimes when she couldn't sleep. Pictures of things she wanted to do when she felt better: the zoo, the beach, a house with a yard and a dog. "Morning, Daddy." She smiled at him, and his heart broke a little more. "Did you have a good night?" "Yeah, sweetheart, good night." He sat down on the edge of the mattress. "What are you drawing?" "A wedding." She held up the paper. Stick figures in a church, flowers everywhere, a woman in white. "Like Mommy showed me in pictures, from when you got married." "That's beautiful, baby." "Do you miss her?" "Every second of every day." "Yeah, I do." "Me too." Lily leaned against him. "Daddy? Am I going to get better?" The question gutted him. He pulled her close, felt her ribs through her thin pajamas. "Yeah, baby, you're going to get better, I promise." "How do you know?" "Because I'm going to sell myself to save you. Because I'm going to marry a woman I don't love, live a lie, and become someone I don't recognize. Because there is nothing in this world I wouldn't do to keep you alive. Because I just do," he said. "Now how about some breakfast?" They ate cereal with milk he'd stretched with water because he was out of money until payday. Lily didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and she was kind enough not to mention it. She was good at that. Too good. 7 years old and already learning to protect him from the truth. After breakfast, Ethan waited until Lily was absorbed in her cartoons, then took the folder into the bathroom. The only room with a lock. The only place he could be alone. He sat on the closed toilet and opened it. The contract was 53 pages long, legal language he had to read 3 times to understand, but the terms were clear. Marriage duration, 1 year from date of wedding, cohabitation, required. He would live in her penthouse apartment, separate bedrooms, public appearances, as needed to maintain appearance of legitimate marriage. Estimated 2 to 3 events per month. Physical relationship, not required, not forbidden. Left to mutual discretion. Financial compensation. All debts paid within 30 days of signed agreement. Lily's transplant funded immediately. Monthly salary of $16,660 for duration of contract. Termination. After 1 year, divorce proceedings initiated. He receives additional $100,000 settlement. Both parties sign NDA regarding true nature of marriage. There were pages about what happened if he breached contract. More pages about confidentiality. Pages about what constituted acceptable public behavior. It read like a business merger because that's exactly what it was. At the back there was a separate document, medical power of attorney, giving him full rights to make decisions about Lily's care. Insurance documents already processed, listing Lily as a dependent on Vivian's company health plan. A letter from Providence General confirming they'd accepted the insurance and scheduled Lily's transplant for 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks. If he signed this, his daughter would be in surgery in 3 weeks. The transplant that would save her life. No more watching her fade. No more lying awake at night wondering if she'd still be breathing in the morning. All he had to do was give up a year of his life. Pretend to love a woman who looked at him like he was a business transaction. Live in her world, wear her masks, become her perfect convenient husband. For Lily. He looked at himself in the mirror above the sink. 32 years old, looking 50. Exhausted. Broke. Beaten down by a world that didn't care if he drowned. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he whispered to his dead wife. "I don't know what else to do." She didn't answer. She never did anymore. Ethan picked up the pen that had been clipped to the contract. His hand shook as he signed his name. He called the number on the folder at 7:30 a.m. A man answered, crisp and professional. "Miss Cross's office." "This is Ethan Cole. She told me to call this number." One moment. The hold music was something classical, probably cost more money than Ethan had ever spent on music in his life. Then a click, and Vivian's voice, perfectly composed despite the early hour. "Mr. Cole, I assume you're calling to accept?" I signed the contract. Excellent. Bring it to my office at 9 a.m. We'll finalize the details. I'm supposed to be sleeping. I work nights, remember? Not anymore. I'm moving you to a position that makes more sense for the CEO's husband. Chief of Building Operations, salary already processed. You start today. She paused. 9 a.m., Mr. Cole. Don't be late. She hung up. Ethan stood in his bathroom holding a dead phone and wondered what he'd just done. At 8:45 a.m., he was standing outside Cross Industries' executive floor, wearing the only suit he still owned. It was 5 years old, didn't fit quite right anymore, but it was clean. He'd left Lily with Mrs. Chen, promising to explain everything later. The folder was tucked under his arm. The receptionist smiled at him with the kind of professional warmth that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Cole? Ms. Cross is expecting you. Go right in. Vivian's office looked different in daylight. Less dramatic, more clinical. She was standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear, speaking rapid fire about quarterly projections and shareholder meetings. She gestured for him to sit without looking at him. Ethan sat, waited, tried not to feel like he'd just walked into a trap he'd never escape. She finished her call, turned to face him. You brought the contract? He held it out. She took it, flipped through the pages, checking his signature. Good. My lawyer will file the marriage license today. We'll have a civil ceremony on Friday. Just us and 2 witnesses. Nothing romantic. I didn't expect romantic. After the ceremony, you'll move into my apartment. I've already had a room prepared for you. Lily's room is next to yours. I assumed you'd want her with you once she's released from the hospital. Wait. Ethan sat forward. Lily's coming with me? Of course. You're her father. Why would you leave her? Vivian frowned slightly. Unless you'd prefer she stay elsewhere. No, I want her with me. I just thought... He didn't know what he'd thought. That he'd have to give her up too. That this deal would cost him everything. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's in my best interest that you're content enough to uphold your end of the agreement. A child makes that more likely. She set the folder on her desk. Your resignation from the janitorial position is effective immediately. HR has your new employment contract and security clearance. You'll have an office on the 10th floor and a staff of 6. Your actual responsibilities will be minimal. This is largely a cosmetic position. So I'm just there, looking important. You're the CEO's husband. That's your job. She checked her watch. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. The movers will pack your apartment today. They'll be there at noon. Don't worry about Lily. I've arranged for a private nurse to stay with her during the transition. You'll both be moved into the penthouse by tonight. It was happening too fast. He couldn't catch his breath. Vivian, Ms. Cross. Call me Vivian. We're getting married in 3 days. Right. Vivian. The name felt strange in his mouth. What are the rules? I mean, day to day. How does this work? She considered the question. We maintain separate lives as much as possible. I work late, leave early. You'll rarely see me except when required for appearances. When we're in public, you're attentive but not effusive. Hold my hand. Stand close. Smile like you're fond of me. That's all. And when we're alone? We're polite, professional. We don't pry into each other's lives. She paused. I value my privacy, Mr. Cole. I expect you to respect that. Ethan. What? My name. It's Ethan. If we're going to do this, you should probably use it. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe? Or discomfort? Fine. Ethan? She walked to her desk, pulled out a small box. You'll need this. Inside was a wedding ring, platinum, simple, expensive. It fit perfectly when he slid it on. How did you know my size? I know everything about you. She pulled out another box, smaller. Her own ring, diamond so large it was probably insured for more than his life was worth. She didn't put it on, just stared at it for a moment. This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they married. They were together for 37 years before he died. Were they happy? I don't think happiness was the point for them. They were partners. They built something together. She closed the box with a snap. I'll wear it on Friday. Until then, we have work to do. Work turned out to be a crash course in being Vivian Cross's husband. Her assistant, Amanda, a woman in her 40s who looked like she could run a military coup without breaking a sweat, walked him through his new identity. "You met at a charity function 6 months ago," Amanda said, reading from a tablet. "Vivian was impressed by your engineering background. You bonded over discussions about sustainable building design. You've been dating quietly ever since. The marriage is sudden, but not rushed. You both knew quickly that this was right." "That's the story?" "That's the story. Memorize it. The board will ask questions, so will the press, though we'll keep media exposure minimal." She looked up. "Can you be convincing?" "I don't know." "Learn. Fast." She handed him the tablet. "This is everything you need to know about Vivian's family, her company, her social circle. Study it. You're going to be tested." He spent the rest of the day reading. The Cross family was old money, manufacturing empire built in the 1920s, evolved into international construction and real estate. Vivian had 2 siblings, Marcus, 2 years younger, currently VP of Operations, and Catherine, 5 years younger, living in London, minimal involvement in the company. The father, Richard Cross, had died of a heart attack 6 months ago. Unexpected. Sudden. The will had been read 3 weeks later. That's when Vivian learned about the marriage clause. Marcus had challenged it immediately, but the lawyers confirmed it was airtight. "He never liked me," Vivian had told the board, according to the meeting notes Ethan was reading. But he knew Marcus would destroy everything he built. This was his way of making sure that didn't happen. Ethan wondered what it was like, having a father who controlled your life even from the grave. At noon, he got a text from the moving company. Everything packed, apartment cleared. Another text from the nurse. Lily was fine, asking when he'd be back. "Soon," he texted back. "I'll explain everything soon." At 6 p.m., Amanda returned. "Time to go. The car's waiting downstairs." "The car? You didn't think you'd be taking the bus anymore, did you?" She almost smiled. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Cole." The penthouse occupied the top floor of a building in Harbor Heights, where people paid more for 3 months of parking than Ethan used to make in a year. The car pulled into an underground garage where a private elevator required a key card to access. Amanda handed him one. "Yours, don't lose it." The elevator opened directly into the apartment. Ethan stepped out and forgot how to speak. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Open concept living space the size of his entire apartment building. Kitchen with appliances he didn't recognize. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than he'd earn in his lifetime. Everything white and gray and sterile, like a magazine spread come to life. "Master suite is on the left," Amanda said. "Your room and Lily's room are on the right. Vivian isn't home yet. She usually returns around 10. "This is insane." "This is your life now. Get used to it." Amanda headed back to the elevator. "Someone will bring Lily up in an hour. Try not to look so shell-shocked when she arrives. Children pick up on that." The elevator doors closed, leaving Ethan alone in the most expensive place he'd ever stood. He found his room. It was bigger than his old apartment. King bed, attached bathroom with a shower that had 6 different settings, walk-in closet already filled with clothes in his size. On the dresser, a framed photo, him and Lily from last Christmas, smiling despite everything. He hadn't given anyone that photo, which meant Vivian had found it somehow, had it framed, put it in his room. Maybe she wasn't entirely heartless. Lily's room was next door, also huge. But here, someone had tried. The walls were painted soft yellow. There was a bookshelf filled with children's books, a toy box with stuffed animals, a desk with art supplies. The bed had a comforter with stars on it. Ethan sat down on the bed and put his head in his hands. What had he done? How was he supposed to explain this to his 7-year-old daughter? "Hey, Lily, Daddy married a stranger for money. Hope you're cool with that." She was a child. She wouldn't understand. She'd be confused and scared and... "Mr. Cole?" A woman's voice from the living room. "I have Lily." He stood, smoothed his shirt, walked out. Lily was standing in the living room, holding the nurse's hand, staring around with enormous eyes. When she saw him, she ran. "Daddy, this place is huge. Are we visiting someone?" Ethan caught her, lifted her up. She was too light, always too light. "No, baby, we're We're staying here. Staying? Like a hotel? Sort of. He couldn't explain. Not yet. Not until he figured out how. It's complicated, but it's okay. We're okay. Is this because of the hospital bills? Lily's voice got very small. Did we have to move because I'm sick? No, God, no. He held her tighter. This is a good thing, Lil. I promise. I got a new job, a really good job, and this is part of it. What kind of job? I'll explain later. Want to see your room? He carried her down the hall, watched her face light up when she saw the yellow walls and the toys. She wriggled down, ran to the bookshelf, started pulling out books with excitement that was the most alive he'd seen her in months. Daddy, can we stay here forever? For a while, sweetheart. How long? A year. Maybe less if Vivian decided he wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe more if the lie became real. But he couldn't say that to a 7-year-old who just wanted to feel safe. Long enough, he said. He got Lily settled, read her 3 books, tucked her into the new bed. She fell asleep holding his hand, exhausted from the day's excitement. He sat there watching her breathe, this small person he'd give anything to protect. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. She didn't hear him. She was dreaming, probably about yellow walls and toys and a life that didn't hurt all the time. At 10:17 p.m., Ethan heard the elevator doors open. He left Lily's room quietly, closed the door behind him. Vivian stood in the living room, still in her business suit, holding a briefcase. She looked exhausted. When she saw him, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, like she'd forgotten he'd be there. Did she settle in okay? Vivian asked. Yeah, she's asleep. Good. Vivian set down her briefcase, slipped off her heels. Without them, she was shorter, more human. I reviewed the hospital schedule. Lily's transplant is set for November 16th, 3 weeks from Friday. I know. You'll need to be there. Obviously, I'll clear my schedule to attend as well. It would look strange if I didn't. The casual way she planned to show up for his daughter's surgery, like it was just another appointment to pencil in, should have made him angry. Instead, he just felt tired. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. We're married now. That's what spouses do. She walked toward the master suite, paused at the doorway. The wedding is Friday at 2 p.m. Courthouse downtown. Wear the suit in your closet, not the one you wore today. What's wrong with the one I wore today? It doesn't fit, and it's old. You're supposed to be marrying a CEO, not applying for food stamps. She said it without malice, just stating facts. Good night, Ethan. Good night. She closed the door. He heard the lock click. Ethan stood in the enormous living room, surrounded by luxury he hadn't earned and didn't want, wearing a stranger's ring on his finger. Through the windows, the city sprawled out below him, millions of lights marking millions of lives. Real lives. Not this artificial thing he'd constructed from desperation and lies. But Lily was asleep in a warm bed, in a safe place, with a surgery scheduled that would save her life. He'd sold his soul for less. Friday would make it official. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and broken promises. Ethan stood in a hallway that had seen 1,000 endings, divorces, custody battles, restraining orders, waiting for his beginning. The suit Vivian had chosen fit perfectly, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, probably cost more than 3 months of his old rent. He tugged at the collar anyway, feeling like an imposter dressed in someone else's life. Lily sat beside him on the wooden bench, swinging her legs, humming something tuneless. She wore a new dress too, pale blue with white flowers, because Vivian had sent clothes for her as well. Practical. Efficient. Everything about this woman was calculated down to the smallest detail. Daddy, why are we at a courthouse? Lily asked for the 3rd time. I told you, sweetheart, grown-up stuff. What kind of grown-up stuff? Before he could answer, the elevator opened and Vivian emerged. She wore a cream-colored suit, her hair down for once, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. She looked softer somehow, though her expression remained unreadable. Behind her walked 2 people Ethan didn't recognize, a man in his 60s, gray-haired and distinguished, and a woman about Vivian's age with kind eyes. Ethan? Vivian's voice was carefully neutral. This is Robert Chen, my father's attorney, and Sarah Mitchell, my personal assistant. They'll be our witnesses." The name Sarah hit him like a fist, his dead wife's name in this stranger's mouth, attached to this lie he was about to make legal. Ethan forced himself to nod. "Nice to meet you." Vivian's eyes dropped to Lily, and something flickered across her face. Discomfort, maybe, or uncertainty. She clearly hadn't expected him to bring his daughter to their fake wedding. "Hello." Lily, bless her, had no sense of adult tension. She smiled brightly. "Hi. Are you Daddy's friend?" "Yes," Vivian said after a pause. "Something like that." "I like your suit. You look like a princess." The comment seemed to startle Vivian. She glanced at Ethan, then back at Lily. "Thank you. You look very pretty yourself." "Daddy bought me this dress." "Well, someone bought it. There were lots of new clothes when we moved." Lily's face scrunched in confusion. "I don't really understand what's happening." "That makes two of us," Vivian said quietly, and for just a second Ethan saw something real behind her mask. Fear, maybe. Or regret. The courthouse official called their names. "Colin Cross, Judge Morrison is ready." They filed into a small room with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes that had probably seen this exact scene play out 100 times. Quick weddings, couple barely looking at each other, going through motions rather than emotions. "This is a civil ceremony," she said, "brief and legally binding. Do you have the license?" Robert handed over the paperwork. The judge reviewed it, nodded. "Very well, please face each other." Ethan turned to Vivian. Up close, he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the careful makeup that didn't quite hide the exhaustion underneath. Her hands were shaking slightly, so she was nervous too. Somehow that made him feel marginally less terrified. "Do you, Vivian Marie Cross, take Ethan James Cole to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Vivian's voice didn't waver. "I do." "Do you, Ethan James Cole, take Vivian Marie Cross to be your lawfully wedded wife?" This was it. The moment everything changed. Ethan thought about Lily's surgery in 3 weeks, the bills that would be paid, the life his daughter would get to live. He thought about Sarah, who would probably understand even if she couldn't forgive him. He thought about the man he used to be before the world broke him down into someone who would marry for money. "I do." Rings? They'd already been wearing them for days, but they made a show of it anyway. Ethan slid the massive diamond onto Vivian's finger. She slid the platinum band onto his. Her hands were ice cold. "By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Judge Morrison looked between them with something that might have been pity. "You may kiss." Neither of them moved. The silence stretched, awkward and thick. Robert cleared his throat. Sarah looked at the floor. Lily, oblivious to the tension, kicked her feet against the bench. Finally, Vivian leaned forward and pressed her lips to Ethan's cheek. Brief, chaste, perfunctory. "Congratulations," the judge said, sounding like she didn't mean it. "Sign here, please." They signed. Robert and Sarah signed as witnesses. The judge stamped the document with a sound like a cell door closing. Just like that, Ethan Cole became someone's husband again. Not because of love, not because of choice, because the world had run out of options and desperation was the only currency left that mattered. Outside the courthouse, Vivian checked her phone immediately. "I have a board meeting in 40 minutes. Robert will handle filing the marriage certificate. The announcement will go to the press this evening. Just a brief statement, nothing elaborate." "What should I do?" "Take Lily home. Get settled. There's a credit card in your name on the kitchen counter. Use it for whatever you need. I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up." She started toward a waiting black car, then paused. "Oh, and Ethan? We're hosting dinner tomorrow night, my mother and Marcus. They'll want to meet you." His stomach dropped. "Your family? Already?" "The sooner we establish normalcy, the better. Be charming. Answer questions carefully. Remember the story." She slid into the car without another word. Robert approached as the car pulled away. "She's not as cold as she seems." "Could have fooled me." Vivian's been groomed since birth to run Cross Industries. Emotion was trained out of her early, but she's not heartless, just careful. He handed Ethan a business card. If you need anything, call me. I've known her since she was 16. I know this arrangement isn't conventional, but she chose you for good reasons. She chose me because I'm desperate. She chose you because you have integrity. There's a difference. Robert glanced at Lily, who was trying to catch leaves falling from a nearby tree. That little girl is lucky to have a father who'd do anything for her. Don't lose sight of that in all this. He left before Ethan could respond. The drive back to the penthouse felt surreal. Ethan kept looking at the ring on his finger, solid and real, proof this wasn't some fever dream. Lily fell asleep against his shoulder in the car, worn out from the morning's confusion. The driver, a man named James, who'd introduced himself with professional courtesy, helped carry her upstairs when they arrived. Will you be needing the car again today, Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole? Like he was someone important now. No, thank you. I'm at your disposal whenever you need. Miss Cross has me on retainer. Just call. James handed him a card with a phone number. Congratulations on the wedding, sir. Everyone kept congratulating him like this was something to celebrate. Ethan put Lily to bed in her new room, then stood in the vast living room trying to figure out what to do with himself. He wasn't working tonight, didn't have bills to worry about, didn't have to count pennies or skip meals or wonder if he'd have heat. Just space. Empty, expensive space. He found the credit card on the counter where Vivian said it would be. Black metal, heavy in his hand, his name embossed in silver letters. No limit listed. He put it back down like it might burn him. His phone rang. Mrs. Chen. Ethan, I heard about the move. Are you all right? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. You sound like a man who just made a deal with the devil. Pretty close to the truth. It's complicated, Mrs. Chen. It always is, but that little girl of yours is going to get her surgery, yes? November 16th. Then complicated doesn't matter. You do what you have to do. Her voice softened. Your Sarah would understand. You know that, don't you? Would she? Ethan stared at his reflection in the enormous windows. A man in an expensive suit standing in a penthouse he didn't earn, wearing a ring that represented everything except love. I hope so, he said. That evening, the news broke. Ethan saw it on his phone first, then on every news site he checked, then trending on social media. Billionaire CEO Vivian Cross marries in private ceremony. The statement was brief, just like she'd said. The couple met 6 months ago, found connection through shared professional interest, decided to marry quietly to avoid media spectacle. The comments were brutal. Gold digger, obviously married her for money. Who is this guy? Never heard of him. She could do so much better. What a downgrade. Probably a green card situation. Follow the money. Ethan closed his phone before he could read more. It didn't matter what strangers thought, except it did, because part of him wondered if they were right. Maybe he was exactly what they said he was, someone who'd sold himself for financial security. How was that different from any other transaction? Vivian came home at 11 p.m. Ethan was still awake, sitting in the dark living room, watching the city lights. She stopped when she saw him, surprise crossing her features. I thought you'd be asleep. Couldn't? She set down her briefcase, loosened her jacket. You read the comments. Some of them. Don't. People are cruel when they're anonymous. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of wine from a bottle that probably cost more than his car used to. They'll get bored soon. Move on to the next scandal. Is that what we are? A scandal? We're a headline. There's a difference. She took a long drink, then looked at him directly for the first time since the wedding. Are you having second thoughts? Would it matter if I was? No, the contract is signed, but I'd prefer to know if you're going to be a problem. The casual way she said it, you're going to be a problem, made anger flash hot in his chest. I'm a human being, not a business asset. In this arrangement, you're both. She didn't say it cruelly, just stating facts. I know this isn't easy for you, but it's not easy for me either. We both made choices. Now we live with them. Did you love him? What? Your father, the man who put that clause in his will. Did you love him? Vivian's expression went carefully blank. That's not relevant. It feels relevant. You're doing all this to keep his company. But was he worth it? She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine glass like it held answers. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. My father was complicated. He was brilliant and demanding and impossible to please. He raised me to be strong, but his version of strength looked a lot like coldness. He never said he loved me. Not once. But he left me his legacy, which I think was his way of saying I was capable. So yes, he was worth it, even if he broke something in me to make me worthy of it. The honesty surprised him, this glimpse of something raw underneath her armor. I'm sorry, Ethan said. Don't be. I'm not. She finished her wine, rinsed the glass with precise movements. Tomorrow night, dinner at 7. My mother, Eleanor, will be polite but calculating. Marcus will be hostile. Be prepared. What should I wear? Not the suit from today, the dark blue one in your closet. And Ethan? She paused at the entrance to her bedroom. Thank you for bringing Lily to the ceremony. It made it feel less hollow. Before he could respond, she was gone, door closed, lock clicking into place. Ethan sat in the dark for another hour trying to understand the woman he'd just married, trying to understand himself for agreeing to this, trying to figure out how to navigate a life that felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Eventually, he went to check on Lily. She was sprawled across the bed, one arm hanging off the edge, completely at peace. He pulled the blanket over her, kissed her forehead. I'm doing this for you, he whispered. I hope someday you'll understand. She sighed in her sleep, smiled slightly, dreaming of something good, he hoped. Something better than the life they'd been living. The next evening, Ethan stood in front of his closet trying to remember the last time he'd cared what he wore. The blue suit fit perfectly, paired with a crisp white shirt and a tie that probably cost more than his weekly grocery budget used to. He looked like someone successful, someone who belonged in this world. The illusion was almost convincing. Lily sat on his bed, watching him with serious eyes. Are important people coming over? Sort of. Vivian's family. Is she your girlfriend now? The question hit him sideways. He'd been avoiding this conversation, hoping Lily was too young to need the full truth. But she was 7, not stupid. She knew something had changed. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. Are you going to get married? We already are. That's what we did yesterday at the courthouse. Lily's eyes went wide. You got married? To the princess lady? Her name is Vivian, and yes. But you didn't tell me. Why didn't you tell me? Because it happened fast, and I wasn't sure how to explain it. Ethan sat down beside her, took her small hands in his. Remember how sick you've been, how we've been worried about the hospital bills. She nodded, suddenly solemn. Vivian is helping us. She's making sure you can get your surgery and get better. But in exchange, we had to make an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? How did you explain a contract marriage to a 7-year-old? We're married, but it's different from how I was married to your mom. It's more like a business agreement. We're helping each other. Do you love her? The question was so innocent, so direct. No, baby, not like I loved your mom. Does she love you? No? Then why did you get married? Because sometimes grown-ups make deals that are complicated, and this deal means you get to be healthy. That's what matters. He squeezed her hands gently. But Lil, this is a secret, okay? We can't tell people that it's an arrangement. We have to pretend it's a normal marriage. That's lying. Yes, it's lying. And I'm sorry. I know I've always told you lying is wrong, but sometimes you have to lie to protect people, Lily finished. Her voice was sad, too understanding for her age. Like how I pretended to feel okay when I was really scared at the hospital because I didn't want you to worry more. His heart broke. Oh, sweetheart, you shouldn't have to do that. But I did, because you were already so sad about Mommy and the money and everything. She looked at him with those two wise eyes. I'm not dumb, Daddy. I know things are hard, If marrying the princess lady makes things better, then it's okay. I can pretend. You shouldn't have to. I want to, for you. She hugged him tight. But Daddy, will she be nice to me? I think so. She's not warm, but she's not cruel. And she made your room nice, didn't she? Yeah, I like the yellow. Lily pulled back. Okay, I'll be good at dinner. I'll use good manners like Mommy taught me. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 p.m. Punctual. Of course, Vivian's family would be punctual. Ethan opened the door to find a woman in her late 60s, elegant in the way that came from generations of wealth. Silver hair in a perfect bob, pearls that were probably real, smile that didn't reach her eyes. Eleanor Cross. Behind her stood a man in his early 30s, dark-haired and handsome in a way that looked expensive. Tailored suit, perfect teeth, watch that cost more than a car. Marcus Cross. The brother trying to steal Vivian's inheritance. You must be Ethan. Eleanor's voice was measured, assessing. I'm Eleanor. This is my son, Marcus. Please, come in. Ethan stepped back, suddenly aware of every way he didn't fit into this world. Eleanor swept past him with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned her right to be anywhere. Marcus followed, his eyes scanning the penthouse with barely concealed calculation, like he was mentally cataloging everything that should have been his. Where's Vivian? Eleanor asked. Finishing up some work. She'll be out in a moment. Ethan gestured toward the living area. Can I get you something to drink? Scotch? Neat. Marcus didn't wait for an invitation before sitting in the chair nearest the windows. So, you're the janitor my sister married. Eleanor shot her son a look. Marcus. What? It's true, isn't it? He was cleaning toilets 6 days ago. Now he's family. I'm just clarifying the facts. Heat rose in Ethan's face, but he kept his voice level. I work janitorial while between engineering positions. Not quite the same as engineering, Marcus laughed. Right. What company? Hamilton and Reed, structural division. Never heard of it. Small firm. We did municipal contracts mostly, bridges, public buildings, and they just let you go? A talented engineer like yourself? The mockery was obvious. Ethan's hands tightened at his sides. The recession hit a lot of firms. I'm sure you remember. I remember people who couldn't adapt lost their jobs. People who were valuable found ways to stay valuable. Marcus accepted the scotch Ethan had poured, didn't say thank you. Tell me, Ethan, how does a down-on-his-luck engineer meet a billionaire CEO? I'm fascinated by the logistics. Charity function, Ethan said, reciting the script Amanda had drilled into him. 6 months ago, we got talking about sustainable building design, found we had similar perspectives. Similar perspectives. Marcus repeated the words like they were a joke. My sister doesn't have perspectives. She has strategies. Everything she does is calculated to benefit her. So what's the calculation here? What does she get from you? Marcus, that's enough. Eleanor's voice was sharp. Vivian can marry whom she chooses. Can she? Or did father's will force her hand? Marcus leaned forward. Because that's what this smells like. Convenient timing, sudden marriage. Man from nowhere with a sick daughter. Yes, I know about the daughter. And my sister plays savior. It's almost poetic. My daughter has nothing to do with this. Doesn't she? I'm guessing her medical bills were substantial, and I'm guessing your bank account wasn't. So Vivian offers you a lifeline, and all you have to do is pretend to love her for a year. Am I close? The accuracy was terrifying. Ethan's voice came out harder than he intended. You don't know anything about... Gentlemen. Vivian's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stood in the hallway, dressed in black slacks and a silk blouse, her expression frozen. Perhaps we can save the interrogation until after dinner. She crossed to Ethan, and he saw it coming a half second before she did it, her hand taking his, squeezing once. A message. Play along. Hello, Mother, Marcus. Her voice was cordial, distant. Thank you for coming. Eleanor stood, kissed Vivian's cheek with the warmth of a business transaction. Darling, we had to meet your husband. You've been so secretive about everything. Not secretive, private. There's a difference. Is there? Marcus rose, walked closer. Because from where I'm standing, this whole thing looks suspicious as hell. You need to be married. Suddenly, you're married. To someone you've never mentioned. Someone who has every financial reason to say yes. Be careful, Marcus. Vivian's voice dropped to ice. Accusations require proof. I'll find it. No, you won't, because there's nothing to find. She turned to Ethan, and something in her expression shifted, softer, almost convincing. We should eat. I believe the caterer has everything ready. Dinner was catered by some restaurant Ethan had never heard of, served by staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The food was exquisite and tasted like ash in his mouth. He sat beside Vivian at the long dining table, painfully aware of every move he made, every word he chose. Eleanor asked polite questions about his background, where he grew up, Providence, working-class neighborhood, where he went to school, state university, scholarships and loans, what his parents did. Father was a mechanic, mother was a teacher, both dead now. She nodded at each answer, filing information away with the efficiency of someone building a dossier. Marcus barely touched his food. He watched Ethan and Vivian with predatory focus, looking for cracks in the facade. So, Ethan, Eleanor dabbed her mouth with a napkin. Vivian tells me you have a daughter, Lily, correct? Yes, ma'am. She's 7. And her mother? The question felt like a trap. Passed away 2 years ago, cancer. I'm very sorry. That must have been difficult. Eleanor's voice held practiced sympathy. It's admirable that you've managed alone. Single fatherhood is challenging. It has its moments. I imagine Vivian's resources have been helpful. Children are expensive, especially when they're unwell. There it was. The polite way of asking if he'd married for money. Vivian's hand found his under the table, squeezed hard, warning him to be careful. Vivian has been generous, Ethan said slowly, but I married her because I care about her, not because of what she can provide. Of course. Eleanor smiled like she didn't believe a word. Though one must admit the timing is convenient, her father's will, your daughter's illness, it all lines up rather neatly. Mother, stop. Vivian's voice was sharp. Ethan is my husband. You'll treat him with respect or you can leave. I'm simply asking questions, darling. Surely if the marriage is legitimate, there's no harm in questions. But the marriage is legitimate, legally binding, publicly acknowledged. What more do you want? I want to know my daughter isn't making a mistake that will cost her everything father built. Eleanor set down her wine glass with a soft click. Richard wanted you to marry, yes, but he wanted you to marry appropriately. Someone from our world. Someone who understands the responsibilities that come with the cross name. You mean someone you could control? Vivian's voice was sharp now, controlled fury burning underneath. Father wanted me married because he didn't trust me to run the company alone. But I am running it successfully, and Ethan is my choice. If you can't accept that, that's your problem, not mine. It becomes my problem when Marcus challenges the will, when he brings evidence to the board that this marriage is a sham designed to circumvent Richard's intentions. Eleanor looked at Ethan. Tell me, Mr. Cole, do you love my daughter? The silence stretched. Everyone at the table was waiting for his answer. Marcus wore a slight smirk. Sure, Ethan would fail this test. Eleanor watched with calculating eyes. Vivian's hand was still gripping his, her body tense. Ethan thought about the contract sitting in a drawer in his room. Thought about the ring on his finger that represented a business transaction. Thought about Lily asleep upstairs, who would live because of this lie. He looked at Vivian. Really looked at her. The exhaustion in her eyes. The weight she carried that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with proving herself worthy of a dead man's approval. The loneliness that came from building walls so high no one could climb them. Yes, he said quietly. I love her. Vivian's eyes widened slightly. Surprise, or maybe something else. Her grip on his hand loosened. She's brilliant and driven and stronger than anyone I've ever met. She doesn't need me to fix her or save her. She chose me despite having 1,000 better options, and every day I wake up grateful that she did. The words came easier now, half truth and half lie blurring together. I'm not from your world. I don't have the right credentials or the right background, but I love your daughter. That's not complicated. The silence that followed felt heavy. Eleanor studied him with new intensity. Marcus's smirk had faded. Vivian's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. Ethan. He squeezed her hand, held her gaze. It's the truth. Was it? He didn't know anymore. Maybe lies told convincingly enough became real. Eleanor stood abruptly. I think we should go, Marcus. We've taken enough of their evening. Mother, Marcus started to protest. Now, Marcus. Her tone left no room for argument. They left with cold goodbyes and tight smiles. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Ethan and Vivian stood in the suddenly silent penthouse, still holding hands, neither moving. You didn't have to say that, Vivian said finally. Yes, I did. That's what they needed to hear. Was it true? He didn't answer. Couldn't, because he didn't know how to separate performance from reality anymore. Vivian pulled her hand away, stepped back. You're good at this. Better than I expected. At lying? At making it look real. She walked to the window, hugged her arms around herself. Marcus isn't going to stop. He'll keep digging, keep looking for proof. Then we'll keep being convincing. For a year. For a year, Ethan echoed. She turned to face him, and in the city lights filtering through the windows, she looked vulnerable, young. What if he finds something? What if he proves the contract? He won't. You don't know that. Then we make sure he has nothing to find. Ethan crossed to her, stood close enough to see the doubt in her eyes. You said this was a business arrangement, so treat it like one. We show up. We play the part. We give them nothing to question. That's simple. That's simple. But neither of them believed it. Vivian looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she nodded once, sharp and decisive. Fine. We have a gala next weekend, hospital fundraiser, black tie. You'll need to be charming. I can do charming. Can you dance? The question caught him off guard. It's been a while. Why? Because there will be dancing, and people will watch us, and it needs to look natural. She hesitated. We should practice. Now? Why not? Unless you have somewhere better to be. She walked to a hidden panel in the wall, pressed something. Music filled the space. Something classical, elegant, the kind of music people dance to at events where the champagne cost more than rent. Vivian held out her hand. Ethan took it. She stepped close, placed his other hand on her waist. Her own hand rested on his shoulder. They started to move, awkward at first, finding rhythm. You're stiff, she murmured. You're terrifying. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Relax, it's just dancing. Just dancing. Except it wasn't. It was two people playing pretend, trying to create something believable from nothing. Her hand was warm in his. She smelled like expensive perfume, and something underneath that was just her. She was taller than Sarah had been, moved differently, felt like a stranger in his arms. You did well tonight, Vivian said quietly. With my family. I said what needed to be said. Was any of it true? What you said about me? He thought about it, about her strength that looked like coldness, about the way she'd made sure Lily's room was painted yellow, about how she'd sat alone in her office at midnight, carrying the weight of a dead man's expectations. Some of it, he admitted. They danced in silence, circling the living room. The city sparkled outside the windows. Somewhere below, millions of people were living real lives, real marriages, real love. I don't know how to do this, Vivian said suddenly. The pretending, the performance. I'm good at business, but this? You're doing fine. I'm not. I'm cold and calculated and everything people say I am. How am I supposed to convince anyone we're in love? The same way I am, by remembering why we're doing this. She met his eyes. Your daughter. Your company. Is that enough? It has to be. The song ended. They stood there, hands still joined, the space between them charged with something Ethan couldn't name. Not attraction, exactly. But recognition, maybe. Two people trapped in the same lie, trying to survive it. Thank you, Vivian said, for tonight, for playing along. That's the deal. Still, thank you. She stepped back, the moment breaking. I should work. Early meeting tomorrow. Right, of course. She walked toward her room, paused at the door. Ethan? The The things you said to my mother about loving me. Don't say them when we're alone. It makes it harder to remember what this really is." Then she was gone. Ethan stood in the empty living room, his hand still warm from where she'd held it, and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. This was supposed to be simple, a transaction. But nothing felt simple anymore. He checked on Lily, still sleeping peacefully, then lay in his own bed staring at the ceiling. The ring on his finger felt heavy, a reminder, a promise, a lie. In 3 weeks, Lily would have her surgery. That's what mattered. Everything else was just noise. He repeated it like a mantra until he almost believed it. The gala was being held at the Sinclair estate, one of those sprawling mansions on the North Shore that old money had built and new money couldn't buy. Ethan stood in his bedroom adjusting his bow tie for the 5th time, hands shaking slightly. The tuxedo fit like it had been made for him, because it had been made for him, measured and tailored in 48 hours by someone whose name he couldn't pronounce. He looked like he belonged at events like this. Another convincing lie. Lily appeared in his doorway wearing pajamas covered in stars. "You look fancy, Daddy." "Too fancy?" "No, you look like a prince." She walked over, straightened his tie with surprising precision. "Mommy taught me how to do this. She said every girl should know how to fix a tie." The mention of Sarah hurt less these days. Or maybe he was just getting better at ignoring the hurt. "Your mom was smart. Are you nervous?" "A little." "Don't be. You'll do great. Just smile and be nice." "That's what I do when I'm scared." She hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart." He kissed the top of her head. "Be good for Mrs. Chen, okay?" "I'm always good." It was true. Lily had adjusted to their new life with the resilience of children who've already survived too much. She'd made friends with the doorman, charmed the building staff, turned their strange situation into an adventure. Sometimes Ethan envied her ability to adapt, to accept. Vivian was waiting in the living room when he emerged. She wore a floor-length gown in deep emerald that probably cost more than his engineering salary used to be for 6 months. Her hair was swept up, diamonds at her throat and ears, real ones, family heirlooms, the kind that came with insurance policies and armed guards. She looked untouchable, beautiful in a way that was almost aggressive. "Ready?" Her voice was clipped, professional. They'd barely spoken in the week since the dinner with her family. She'd worked late every night, left early every morning, avoiding him or avoiding what had happened when they danced. The moment when the performance had felt too real. "As I'll ever be." The car ride was silent. James drove them through streets lined with mansions, each one more ostentatious than the last, until they arrived at gates that required a security check. The Sinclair estate sprawled before them, 3 stories of stone and glass, lit up like a palace, surrounded by gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. "Remember the story?" Vivian said as they pulled up to the entrance. "We met at the Riverside Children's Hospital fundraiser 6 months ago. You were there because of Lily's treatment. I was there as a board member. We talked about architecture and sustainable design. You impressed me with your insights on structural efficiency." "I know the story." Knowing it and selling it are different things. These people are sharks. They smell weakness. She looked at him directly for the first time that evening. "Stay close to me. Don't wander off. And if Marcus is here, which he will be, don't let him bait you into saying something stupid." "I'm not an idiot, Vivian. I didn't say you were. I said you're untested. There's a difference." The car stopped. Immediately a valet opened her door. "Smile. We're on stage now." The performance began. Vivian took his arm as they walked up the marble steps. Her touch was light, practiced, the gesture of a woman comfortable with being seen on someone's arm. Camera flashes exploded around them. Apparently the press had been invited to document Providence's elite doing charity. Ethan kept his expression neutral, pleasant, the way Amanda had coached him. Don't grin like an idiot. Don't scowl like you're being tortured. Just exist comfortably in your own skin. Inside, the estate was everything old money aspired to be. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. Art that belonged in museums. Servers in white jackets carrying champagne that cost more per bottle than Ethan's old monthly rent. Everyone was beautiful and expensive and spoke in that particular cadence of people who'd never worried about bills or hunger or keeping the lights on. "Vivian, darling," a woman in her 50s descended on them immediately, air-kissing both of Vivian's cheeks with practiced precision. "And this must be the mysterious husband. We've all been dying to meet him." "Catherine, this is Ethan. Ethan, Catherine Sinclair, tonight's host." "Lovely to meet you." Ethan shook her hand, trying to match her energy, warm but not desperate, friendly but not familiar. "Charmed." Catherine's eyes swept over him, cataloging and assessing. "You've caused quite a stir, you know. Vivian's been determinedly single for years. We'd all given up hope of her finding someone. I'm lucky she took a chance on me." "Luck had nothing to do with it, I'm sure. Vivian doesn't do anything by chance." Catherine turned back to Vivian. "Your mother is already here. And Marcus, of course. He's been holding court near the bar, telling anyone who'll listen that you've made a terrible mistake." Vivian's expression didn't change, but Ethan felt her grip on his arm tighten. "Marcus has always been dramatic." "Well, you two should make the rounds. Lots of people eager to meet the man who caught the uncatchable Vivian Cross." Catherine drifted away toward other guests, already moving on to the next social transaction. They moved through the crowd slowly. Vivian introduced him to dozens of people whose names blurred together: board members, business partners, society figures who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. Everyone was polite. Everyone was curious. Everyone was clearly wondering what the hell Vivian Cross was doing with a man who hadn't been born into their world. Ethan played his part. He was attentive but not clingy, answering questions about his background with the careful honesty they'd scripted. Yes, he'd worked in engineering. The recession had been difficult. He'd taken whatever work he could find to support his daughter. He let them see just enough struggle to be real, not so much that he looked pathetic, walking a tightrope between sympathetic and suspicious. "You're doing well," Vivian murmured during a brief moment alone. They stood near the windows overlooking the garden, champagne glasses in hand as cover. "Better than I expected." "You expected me to embarrass you?" "I expected you to be uncomfortable. You're not showing it." "I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it." He took a sip of champagne that tasted like liquid gold and felt wasteful. "Your mother is staring at us. She's always staring, cataloging weaknesses, planning her next move." Vivian's jaw tightened. "She didn't believe what you said at dinner about loving me. She thinks you're a con artist." "Am I not?" The question made her look at him sharply. "What?" "I married you for money. To save my daughter. That's the definition of a con, isn't it? It would be if you were lying about the terms. You're not. We both know exactly what this is." She turned back to the crowd, her expression carefully neutral. "Don't confuse honesty between us with honesty to them. Those are different things." Before Ethan could respond, Marcus materialized beside them. He wore his tuxedo like armor, his smile sharp enough to cut. "Brother-in-law, how delightful to see you again." "Marcus," Ethan kept his voice even, "enjoying the party? Or is this all a bit overwhelming for someone of your background?" The pause before background was deliberate, heavy with condescension. "It's a nice event, good cause." "Good cause," Marcus laughed. "The Riverside Children's Hospital, where your daughter is being treated, if I recall correctly. Must be gratifying to attend a fundraiser for the very institution that's benefiting from my sister's generosity." "Marcus, not here." Vivian's voice was low, warning. "Why not here? Everyone's curious. Might as well satisfy their curiosity." Marcus raised his voice slightly, just enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "Tell me, Ethan, when exactly did you and my sister fall in love? Because the timeline is fascinating. Father dies in April. Will is read in May with the marriage clause. By June, Vivian has conveniently fallen for a man desperate enough to sign anything. October, you're married. It's almost like someone planned it." "That's enough." Vivian stepped between them, her body language shifting to something protective. "You're drunk." "I'm observant. There's a difference." Marcus leaned closer, his eyes cold. "I'm going to prove this marriage is a fraud. And when I do, you'll lose everything Father left you. The company, the money, the precious legacy you've spent your whole life trying to be worthy of. All of it. Gone." "You'll have to prove it first." Vivian's voice was ice. Good luck with that. Marcus smiled. I don't need luck. I have investigators, lawyers, time. Sooner or later, your husband will slip. He'll say something, do something, reveal the truth. And when that happens, I'll be there to catch it. He turned to Ethan. Nothing personal. You seem like a decent guy stuck in a bad situation, but you're standing between me and what's rightfully mine. That makes you a problem. He walked away, leaving a wake of tension behind him. He knows, Ethan said quietly. He doesn't have proof yet, but he knows. Knowing and proving are different things. Vivian's hand found his, gripped tight. We need to be more convincing, more public, starting now. What do you mean? I mean we need to look like a couple in love, not business partners making small talk. She pulled him toward the center of the room where couples were dancing to music provided by a live orchestra. Dance with me. Vivian, dance with me. Everyone's watching. Marcus is watching. Show them something real. They stepped onto the dance floor. Ethan placed his hand on her waist, took her other hand in his. They'd practiced this that night in the penthouse. But this was different. This was performance with an audience of hundreds, all of them waiting for them to fail. The music was something slow, romantic. Ethan tried to remember the steps, tried to look natural. Vivian was tense in his arms, her body rigid with the effort of performing intimacy. Relax, he murmured. You told me to relax when we practiced. Take your own advice. This is different. They're all judging us. So let them judge. We know the truth. They don't. He pulled her slightly closer, lowered his voice so only she could hear. Tell me something real. What? Something true about you. Not the performance. Something that's just yours. She was quiet for a moment, their bodies moving in sync with the music. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I wanted to be a photographer when I was young, not run a company, not be an executive. I wanted to travel and take pictures of things that mattered, people, moments, truth. What happened? My father happened. He told me art was a hobby, not a career, that I had responsibilities, a legacy to uphold. So I put the camera away and learned to read spreadsheets instead. She met his eyes, and for once, there was no mask, just exhaustion. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have looked like if I'd been brave enough to say no. You still could, after the year is up, after you've secured the company. Could I? Or will I have spent so many years being what he wanted that I've forgotten who I actually am? She shook her head slightly. Your turn. Tell me something true. Ethan thought about all the things he could say, about Sarah's death, about the guilt of not being able to save her, about the terror of watching Lily fade. Instead, he chose something smaller, more honest. I miss engineering, not the job, but the work itself. Building things, solving problems, creating structures that would last. There was something pure about it. You started with nothing and ended with something solid, real. He paused. I think that's why this is so hard. This life we're building, it's not real. It's just performance. And I don't know how to make something that matters out of lies. Maybe it doesn't have to matter. Maybe it just has to work. Is that enough for you? She didn't answer. The song ended, another beginning immediately. They kept dancing, neither willing to break the moment. Around them, other couples moved in their own orbits. Marcus watched from the bar, his expression calculating. Eleanor spoke with a group of society women, her eyes tracking Vivian and Ethan's every move. They're waiting for us to fail, Vivian said. Then we won't fail. It's not that simple. Why not? We show up, we play the part, we make them believe. He spun her gently, pulled her back close. Unless you don't think you can. That sparked something in her eyes. Defiance, pride, challenge. I can do anything I set my mind to. Prove it. Something shifted in her expression, decision maybe, or recklessness. She leaned up and kissed him. It was sudden, unexpected. Her lips were soft against his, the kiss chaste but deliberate. A performance, clearly. A message to everyone watching that they were real. But Ethan felt his heart stutter anyway, felt his hands tighten on her waist, felt something dangerous spark to life in his chest. When she pulled back, her eyes were wide, startled, like she'd surprised herself. That was... Ethan's voice came out rough. Convincing. She said it quickly, firmly. That was convincing. They needed to see it. Right. Of course. He stepped back slightly, putting space between them. Good thinking. The moment broke. They were back to being careful strangers, playing pretend. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. They made more rounds, shook more hands, smiled until Ethan's face hurt. Every interaction felt like a test, every question a trap waiting to catch them in a contradiction. But they navigated it together, learning each other's rhythms, covering each other's gaps. By the time they left at midnight, Ethan was exhausted. Not from the physical demands, but from the constant vigilance, the never-ending performance. In the car, Vivian kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. You did well tonight, really well. So did you. I've had more practice. She leaned back against the leather seat, closing her eyes. Marcus is going to escalate. Tonight proved that. He's not going to wait for us to slip. He's going to force mistakes. How? I don't know yet, but he will. She opened her eyes, looked at him. The kiss. That was smart. Quick thinking. Was it thinking or instinct? The question hung between them, dangerous and loaded. Does it matter? Vivian asked. I don't know. Does it? She didn't answer, just turned to look out the window at the city passing by, her expression unreadable. When they got home, Mrs. Chen was asleep in the living room, a book open on her lap. Ethan covered her with a blanket, checked on Lily, still sleeping peacefully, then stood in the hallway, not sure what to do with himself. Vivian had already disappeared into her room, but a moment later, she emerged, still in her gown, holding something. She walked over to him, held it out. It was a photograph. Old, slightly faded. A young woman, barely 20, holding a camera, grinning at whoever was taking the picture. She looked happy. Free. Nothing like the controlled woman Vivian had become. That's me, Vivian said quietly. Before I learned to be who they needed. I thought you should know that version existed. Once. Ethan took the photo carefully. She looks different. She was different, softer, more naive. She believed in things like love and art and following dreams. Vivian's smile was sad. My father trained that out of me, said it made me weak, vulnerable. Did it? I don't know, maybe, but I think maybe it also made me human. She took the photo back, held it like something precious. The kiss tonight. It wasn't just performance, was it? The honest question deserved an honest answer. No, it wasn't. That's a problem. Why? Because this only works if we keep it simple, transactional. The moment we start feeling something real, we complicate everything. She looked at him, and in her eyes was something close to fear. I can't afford complications, Ethan. Not now. Not with Marcus circling. Not with everything at stake. So what do? We remember why we're doing this. Your daughter, my company. That's what matters. Not, she gestured helplessly between them, not whatever this is. And if we can't separate it that cleanly, we have to, because the alternative is disaster. She started back toward her room, paused at the door. Lily's surgery is in 2 weeks. After that, we'll have breathing room. We just need to hold it together until then. Just 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks, she echoed. But they both knew 2 weeks could be an eternity when you were living a lie that was starting to feel too much like truth. The next morning, Ethan woke to shouting. Not loud, but sharp. Vivian's voice cutting through the penthouse's usual silence. He pulled on a shirt and went to investigate. Vivian stood in the living room, still in her pajamas, phone pressed to her ear. Her face was white with fury. You had no right. None. She was speaking through clenched teeth. That information was sealed. How did you... She listened, her jaw tightening. I don't care what you think you found. You won't use it. Ethan caught her eye, mouthed, What's wrong? She held up a hand, kept listening. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I will destroy you. Legally, financially, professionally. Don't test me, Marcus. She hung up, threw her phone on the couch with enough force that Ethan heard it crack against the leather. What happened? Marcus hired investigators. They've been digging into your past, into Sarah's medical records. Vivian's voice was shaking with rage. He found out about the experimental treatment she tried, the one that didn't work. He's threatening to leak the story to the press, paint you as someone who's desperate enough to do anything for money because you couldn't save your wife. Ice flooded Ethan's veins. He can't do that. Those records are private. Private doesn't mean inaccessible. Not if you know the right people, pay the right bribes. She started pacing, her mind clearly racing through possibilities. He's going to frame this as a pattern. You couldn't save Sarah, so you married me to save Lily. Make you look calculating, mercenary. I did marry you to save Lily. I know that. But the way Marcus will tell it makes you look like a predator, someone who targets vulnerable women for their resources. She stopped pacing, looked at him. He's also found your employment records. The real ones. Not the sanitized version we put in your background. He knows you weren't just laid off during the recession. He knows you were fired. Ethan's stomach dropped. How could he possibly... I don't know, but he has documented proof. Termination papers, performance reviews, everything. Her voice was tight. Why didn't you tell me you were fired? Because it was humiliating, and it doesn't matter anymore. It matters if Marcus uses it to prove you're a liar, that our whole story is fabricated. She crossed her arms. What happened? Why were you actually fired? The truth sat heavy in his throat. He'd never told anyone this, not even Mrs. Chen. I missed too much work after Sarah died. I wasn't handling it well, drinking, not sleeping. My performance suffered. They gave me warnings. I didn't listen. So they let me go. He met her eyes. I'm not proud of it, but I had a 7-year-old daughter and a mountain of debt and no idea how to function without my wife. So I fell apart. And then I pulled myself together and took whatever work I could find. That's the truth. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. But it's done. I survived it. Lily survived it. That's what matters. Not to Marcus. To him, this is ammunition. She walked to the window, stared out at the morning light. He's going to release this information at the board meeting next week, publicly, in front of all the shareholders and directors. Make a case that our marriage is fraudulent, that you're an opportunist taking advantage of me. Can he prove the marriage is fake? No, because legally it's not fake. We're actually married. The paperwork is genuine. She turned back to him. But he can create enough doubt to make the board question my judgment. Start an investigation. Delay the transfer of controlling interest until they're satisfied the marriage is legitimate. How long would that take? Months, maybe a year, during which time Marcus would be acting CEO. And by the time the investigation concluded, even if it found in our favor, he'd have done enough damage to the company that it wouldn't matter. Her hands were trembling now. I can't let that happen. Everything my father built, everything I've worked for, I won't let Marcus destroy it because he's petty and jealous. Ethan walked over to her. So what do we do? I don't know. Fight back somehow. But Marcus holds all the cards right now. He has information we can't deny, a narrative that's partially true. And the board's ear. She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, Vivian looked genuinely scared. I don't know how to win this. The admission cost her. Ethan could see it in the way she held herself, the careful control cracking at the edges. Then we changed the narrative, he said. Marcus wants to paint me as a desperate opportunist? Fine. We own it. But we frame it differently. Not as weakness, as strength. I don't follow. What's more believable? That you fell for a man who has his life perfectly together, or that you fell for someone who's been through hell and came out the other side? Someone who's fought for his daughter's life, who's done whatever it took to survive. Ethan's mind was racing now, seeing possibilities. We don't hide what happened with Sarah. We tell that story. The real one. About a man who lost everything and refused to give up. About a woman who saw that strength and chose it over men who'd never been tested. Vivian was listening now, really listening. Turn his attack into our advantage. Exactly. He wants to make me look weak? We show them I'm the strongest person in the room because I've survived what most of them couldn't imagine. He paused. It's the truth, Vivian. just framed differently. She studied him, something shifting in her expression. That might work, if we're convincing enough. We were convincing last night. Last night was easy. This will be harder, more personal, more exposed. She bit her lip, thinking. The board meeting is in 6 days. That gives us time to prepare, to get our story aligned, to make sure we're unshakable. So we practice, we rehearse, we make sure Marcus can't find any cracks. Can we? She looked at him intently. Be honest. Can you stand in front of a room full of strangers and tell them about the worst moments of your life? Make them see it as strength instead of weakness? Could he? Ethan thought about Sarah's funeral, about the nights he'd sat alone in their empty apartment, drowning in grief and bills, about the morning he'd realized his daughter was dying and he had no way to save her. Those moments had broken him, shattered him into pieces he was still trying to fit back together, but they'd also forged something harder in him, something that couldn't quit. Yes, he said, I can do it. For Lily, for you, for this life we're trying to build. Vivian held his gaze, and then slowly she nodded. Okay, then that's what we do. We fight Marcus with the truth, the real one, not the sanitized version. Together. Together, she echoed. A sound from the hallway made them both turn. Lily stood there, rubbing her eyes, her hair a mess from sleep. Daddy, why are you guys up so early? Just talking, sweetheart. Ethan crossed to her, picked her up even though she was getting too big for it. How are you feeling? Good. Can I have pancakes? Absolutely. He carried her to the kitchen, acutely aware of Vivian watching them. When he glanced back, she looked thoughtful, uncertain, like she was seeing something she hadn't expected to find. I'll make coffee, Vivian said quietly. You cook? I make coffee. That's different. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Everything else, I'm useless at. They moved around the kitchen in careful choreography. Ethan making pancakes, Vivian operating an espresso machine that probably cost more than a car, Lily chattering about a dream she'd had about flying. It felt almost normal, almost like a real family. Vivian? Lily asked suddenly. Are you Daddy's wife now? Vivian froze, her hand on the coffee cup. Yes, I am. So you're like my mom, but not my real mom. More like your dad's partner, someone who's here to help. Okay. Lily accepted this with the easy logic of children. Can you do braids? Mrs. Chen tries, but she's not very good at them. I don't know. I've never tried. Will you try, please? Vivian looked at Ethan, panic in her eyes. He gave her an encouraging nod. Okay, Vivian said carefully. After breakfast. I'll try. 20 minutes later, Vivian sat on the couch with Lily between her knees, attempting to braid the girl's dark curls. Her movements were awkward, unpracticed. She'd clearly never done this before, but she was trying, her tongue between her teeth in concentration, determined not to fail even at something as simple as a child's hairstyle. Ethan watched from the kitchen, coffee cup in hand, something warm and dangerous spreading through his chest. This woman who ran a billion-dollar company with ruthless efficiency was struggling with a 7-year-old's hair and refusing to give up. There, Vivian said finally. The braid was crooked, loose in places, but complete. How's that? Lily ran to the mirror, studied her reflection. It's perfect. Thank you. She hugged Vivian impulsively, wrapping thin arms around the woman's waist. Vivian stiffened, clearly not used to being hugged, not sure what to do with her hands. After a moment, she patted Lily's back awkwardly. You're welcome, she murmured. When Lily ran off to play, Vivian stayed on the couch, looking stunned. You did good, Ethan said. I don't know how to do this. The family thing, the warmth thing. My father wasn't... She trailed off. He didn't believe in coddling, said it made children weak. Is that why you're so guarded? Probably. He trained it into me. Emotion is liability, attachment is weakness, control is everything. She looked at him. But your daughter just hugged me like I'm someone safe, someone trustworthy. and I don't know how to be that. You're already being it. You just don't realize. How? You're here. You're trying. That's more than a lot of people do. Ethan sat down beside her. You don't have to be perfect, Vivian. You just have to show up. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, smoothed her pajamas. I need to work. Prepare for the board meeting. Create our defense strategy. Vivian, this is what I'm good at, Ethan. Planning, strategizing, winning. She headed toward her room, paused at the door. Thank you. For the pancakes. For everything. Then she was gone. Ethan sat in the quiet living room, his cold coffee forgotten, and realized something terrifying. He was starting to care about her. Not the woman in the contract, not the CEO who'd offered him a deal, but the real person underneath, the one who tried to braid hair she didn't know how to braid, who'd shown him a photograph of the girl she used to be, who was scared of failing the father who'd never told her he loved her. This was supposed to be simple, a transaction. 1 year and they'd walk away clean, but nothing about this felt simple anymore. And the board meeting was in 6 days. 6 days to prepare their defense, to align their stories, to make sure Marcus couldn't destroy what they were building. 6 days until everything either came together or fell apart completely. Ethan pulled out his phone, looked at the calendar. November 16th was circled in red. Lily's surgery. 9 days away now, so close he could almost touch it. The thing he'd sold his soul to achieve. But somewhere along the way, this had stopped being just about survival. It had become about something else, something he wasn't ready to name yet. He looked at the ring on his finger, solid, real. A promise made in a courthouse to a woman he barely knew. A promise that was starting to feel more like truth than lie. And that terrified him more than anything Marcus could threaten. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday. Ethan spent the morning trying not to throw up. He'd reviewed their strategy 100 times with Vivian over the past 6 days. Every question Marcus might ask, every angle he might attack from, every piece of ammunition he'd try to use. They'd rehearsed responses until the words felt mechanical, empty of meaning. But now, standing in front of the mirror in his office at Cross Industries, Ethan felt like he was about to walk into an execution. His phone buzzed. Vivian. Conference room B in 10 minutes. Robert wants to review one more time. He texted back confirmation, straightened his tie. The office they'd given him was on the 10th floor, modest by executive standards, but lavish compared to anything he'd had before. He barely used it. Mostly he just existed here, a prop in Vivian's carefully constructed theater. The staff was polite, deferential, but he could see the questions in their eyes. Who is this guy? Why is he here? What did he do to deserve this? The same questions Marcus would ask in approximately 70 minutes. Robert was waiting in conference room B with Vivian and 2 other attorneys Ethan had met briefly. Sharp-eyed women in expensive suits who looked like they could dismantle a hostile takeover before lunch. Vivian sat at the head of the table, her armor fully in place. Charcoal suit, hair pulled back, expression unreadable. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. Sit. Robert gestured to the chair beside Vivian. Let's run through this one final time. They spent the next 45 minutes reviewing every possible scenario. Marcus would present his evidence, Ethan's termination records, details about Sarah's failed treatment, the timeline of their relationship that looked suspiciously convenient. He'd paint Ethan as a desperate man who'd married for money, Vivian as someone who'd entered a fraudulent marriage to circumvent her father's will. The key, Robert said, leaning forward, is that nothing Marcus will present actually proves fraud. The marriage is legal. The timeline, while convenient, isn't impossible. People fall in love quickly all the time. What we need to do is reframe his evidence, make it support our narrative instead of his. Which is where Ethan comes in, one of the attorneys added. Your story is compelling. Man loses his wife, fights to save his daughter, finds unexpected love. It's sympathetic, human. If you can sell it convincingly, the board will have a hard time voting against you. And if I can't sell it? Ethan's voice came out rougher than intended. Then Marcus wins, Vivian said flatly. He gets control of the company. I lose everything. And your daughter's medical coverage gets pulled because it was contingent on you being my legal spouse with full benefits. She met his eyes. So you need to sell it. The weight of it pressed down on him. Lily's surgery was in 3 days. 3 days. If this went wrong, if Marcus succeeded in proving the marriage was fraudulent, the insurance company could retroactively deny coverage. The surgery would be canceled. His daughter would die. No pressure. I'll sell it, he said quietly. Robert nodded. Remember, honesty is your weapon. Don't try to hide the hard parts. Lean into them. Make the board see you as a man who survived impossible circumstances, not someone trying to game the system. And Ethan? Vivian's voice was soft, almost gentle. When Marcus attacks, and he will attack personally, viciously, don't take the bait. Stay calm. Let him look like the aggressor. I know. Do you? Because in practice, you get defensive. Your voice gets hard. Your jaw tightens. She reached over, touched his hand briefly. I need you to be soft today. Vulnerable. Let them see the man I fell in love with, not the man who's angry at the world. The man I fell in love with. The words were part of the script, the performance. But the way she said them, the way her eyes held his for just a moment too long, it felt real. Or maybe he just wanted it to feel real. Maybe he was so deep in the lie that he couldn't tell anymore. At 1:55 p.m., they walked into the main boardroom. It was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 40 people, art on the walls that was probably worth more than Ethan would earn in 10 lifetimes. The board members were already seated, 18 of them, mostly men in their 50s and 60s who'd built fortunes and reputations on being able to spot weakness. Eleanor sat near the middle, her expression neutral. Marcus sat at the far end, looking like a predator who'd already tasted blood. Vivian took her seat at the head of the table. Ethan sat beside her, acutely aware of every eye in the room tracking his movement. Thank you all for coming. Vivian's voice was steady, commanding. I know there have been questions about my recent marriage. My brother has requested this meeting to address his concerns. I believe in transparency, so I've agreed. Marcus, the floor is yours. Marcus stood slowly, savoring the moment. He had a folder in his hand thick with documents. Thank you, Vivian. I'll try to be brief. He opened the folder. 4 months ago, our father passed away. His will contained a clause stating that controlling interest in Cross Industries would pass to Vivian only if she was married within 1 year of his death. If not, control passes to me. We're all aware of the will's contents, one of the board members said impatiently. Get to the point. The point is that my sister, who has been determinedly single for years, suddenly married a man none of us had heard of, a man with significant financial problems, a dying daughter, medical debt in the hundreds of thousands. Marcus pulled out documents, passed them down the table. These are Ethan Cole's employment records. He wasn't between engineering positions as we were told. He was fired for poor performance, for drinking on the job. He spent 2 years working as a night janitor in this very building. Murmurs around the table. Ethan felt his face flush but kept his expression neutral. These are his wife's medical records. Obtained legally, I assure you. Sarah Cole underwent experimental cancer treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. Cost them everything they had. When she died, Ethan was left with crushing debt and a daughter who needs a kidney transplant. Marcus's voice was sharp, cutting. Within months of our father's death, when the marriage clause became public knowledge, Ethan and Vivian suddenly began a whirlwind romance. How convenient. That's quite a narrative, Vivian said coolly. Do you have actual proof of fraud or just circumstantial evidence? I have a timeline that defies credibility. I have financial motivation. I have a man desperate enough to do anything. Marcus looked directly at Ethan. Tell me, Mr. Cole, did my sister approach you about this marriage, or did you approach her? The question was a trap. Either answer could be twisted. Ethan took a breath, remembered what Robert had said. Honesty is your weapon. She approached me, he said quietly, in her office, late at night. I was cleaning. She offered me a deal. Silence crashed through the room. Vivian's hand tightened on the table, but she didn't interrupt. What kind of deal? Marcus leaned forward, scenting victory. She needed a husband. I needed money for my daughter's medical care. On the surface, it looked transactional. Ethan met Marcus's eyes steadily. But here's what your investigation missed. The first time I met your sister, really met her, not just saw her from a distance, I saw someone as trapped as I was. Different trap, same desperation. That's very poetic, doesn't change the facts. The facts are that I was fired from my engineering job, yes. Not for drinking, that's a lie. I was let go because after my wife died, I couldn't function. I'd sit at my desk and forget what I was supposed to be doing. I'd miss meetings because I was sitting in my car crying. I'd go home to my daughter and have no idea how to help her understand why her mother wasn't coming back. His voice was steady but soft, forcing them to lean in to hear. The company gave me chances. Warnings. I didn't take them because I was drowning, so they let me go. And I don't blame them. That's very sad, but I'm not finished. Ethan's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Marcus stop. After that, I took whatever work I could find. Janitorial, night shift. Because my daughter needed to eat and I needed to pay for her dialysis, and I couldn't afford pride. I cleaned toilets in the building where I used to have an office. I mopped floors past midnight while my daughter slept in someone else's care. And every single night, I wondered if I was failing her the way I'd failed her mother. The room was absolutely silent now. So yes, when Vivian offered me money to marry her, my first thought was, this will save Lily. My second thought was, this is insane. But my third thought, he looked at Vivian, saw something vulnerable flash across her face. My third thought was that maybe someone else understood what it felt like to be trapped by circumstances you couldn't control, to have your entire life dictated by other people's expectations. This is very touching, Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Doesn't prove the marriage is legitimate. You want proof? Ethan turned back to the board. Here's what your investigators didn't find. In the 3 months since I married Vivian, I've learned that she takes her coffee black because adding anything feels like weakness. That she works until 2 a.m. most nights because stopping means thinking, and thinking means feeling. That she hasn't spoken to her father's ghost, but she talks to his memory in her head, constantly trying to prove she was worth choosing. His throat was tight. You want to know if this marriage is real? I don't know how to answer that. The paperwork is real. The commitment is real. But what we feel, that's complicated. Feelings aren't the issue, one of the board members interjected. The question is whether this marriage was entered into solely to circumvent the will. Was it? Marcus demanded. Simple question, Ethan. Did you marry my sister because you love her or because she paid you to? The trap was perfect, undeniable. Every eye in the room was on him. Ethan thought about that first night in Vivian's office, the cold calculation in her eyes, the contract she'd presented like a business proposal. He thought about the week since, the careful distance they'd maintained, the performance they'd perfected, the way they'd learned to move around each other like strangers sharing space. But he also thought about her trying to braid Lily's hair, about the photograph of the girl she used to be, about the way she'd kissed him at the gala, startled by her own impulse, about dancing in the living room while she confessed dreams she'd buried. I married her because I needed to save my daughter, Ethan said. That's the truth. But Marcus, here's what you don't understand. That's how most marriages start. Not with love, with need, with practicality, with two people making a choice that benefits them both. He leaned forward. My parents married because my mother was pregnant and my father was scared. They stayed married for 37 years. Were they in love on their wedding day? No. Did they build love over time? Yes. So was their marriage real? That's not the same. It's exactly the same. You want me to say I was madly in love with Vivian the day we married? I wasn't. I barely knew her. But I respected her strength, her intelligence, her refusal to let your father's expectations destroy her. He glanced at Vivian, saw tears she was fighting to hide. And every day since, I've learned more reasons why choosing her was right. Not just for Lily, for me. How convenient that you discovered all this after signing the contract, Marcus sneered. You think I wanted this? Ethan's voice rose slightly, emotion cracking through. You think I wanted to marry a stranger? To move into a world where I don't belong? To have people like you look at me and see a gold digger? He stood, placed his hands flat on the table. I did it because the alternative was watching my daughter die. And if you're telling me you wouldn't have done the same thing, married someone you didn't love, signed away your pride, become someone you're not, to save your child's life, then you're either lying or you've never loved anyone more than yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Is there actual evidence of fraud? Robert asked calmly. Because everything Mr. Cole just described, financial motivation, quick marriage, practical considerations, none of that proves the marriage isn't legally valid. Marriages of convenience are not illegal. They're simply marriages with different foundations than romantic ones. The spirit of the will, Marcus started. The spirit of the will, Eleanor interrupted, speaking for the first time, was that Vivian should be married. Not that she should be in love. Richard wanted to ensure she had a partner, someone to share the burden of running this company, someone to keep her from being completely alone. She looked at Ethan. From what I've observed, my daughter has found that. However unorthodox the arrangement. Marcus whirled on his mother. You're taking their side? I'm taking the company's side, which is what Richard would have wanted. Eleanor's voice was steel. Marcus, you've presented no actual evidence of fraud, just suspicions, judgment, disapproval of your sister's choices. None of that constitutes grounds to invalidate the will. The board deserves to know. The board knows enough. One of the older board members stood. I've heard nothing here that suggests the marriage is illegal or fraudulent. Unconventional, yes, but not invalid. Ms. Cross has met the terms of her father's will. Unless there's concrete proof otherwise, this matter is settled. Other board members nodded, murmured agreement. Marcus's face was red, furious. This isn't over, he said quietly. I'll find proof, real proof. You do that, Vivian said, her voice like ice. In the meantime, you're removed from your position as VP of Operations, effective immediately. The company doesn't need an executive more interested in internal warfare than actual work. You can't. I can. I'm CEO. The board just confirmed my authority by declining to invalidate my marriage. She stood, faced him directly. You're still a shareholder, Marcus. You'll still receive dividends, but you're done trying to undermine me from inside the company. Security will escort you out within the hour. Marcus looked around the table, searching for support, found none. His face twisted with rage and humiliation. This isn't over, Vivian. I'll destroy you for this. You're welcome to try, but do it from outside these walls. He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The tension in the room deflated slowly. Board members stood, gathered their things, offered perfunctory congratulations to Vivian. Eleanor approached last, studied Ethan with calculating eyes. That was quite a performance, Mr. Cole. It wasn't a performance, it was the truth. Was it? Or was it what needed to be said? She turned to Vivian. You played this well, darling, better than I expected, but be careful. The harder you fight to hold on to something, the more it costs you in the end. I know what things cost, Mother. Do you? I wonder. Eleanor's eyes flicked between them. Just remember, contracts end, feelings don't. Make sure you know which one you're building your life on. She left before either of them could respond. The room emptied until only Ethan, Vivian, and Robert remained. Well, Robert said, gathering his papers. That went better than expected. Marcus overplayed his hand, got emotional, made it personal instead of procedural. He looked at Ethan. Your testimony was compelling, honest without being weak. You did well. Thanks, Ethan said numbly. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him shaky and exhausted. I'll file the formal documentation with the court. Confirm the marriage meets the will's requirements. Should be finalized by next week. Robert paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think Richard would have approved of you. He valued resilience above everything. And you've certainly demonstrated that. Then he was gone too. Vivian stood at the window, staring out at the city. She was perfectly still, perfectly controlled, but Ethan could see the tremor in her shoulders. Vivian? You meant it. Her voice was barely audible. What you said about learning reasons why choosing me was right. Some of it. Which parts? The parts about respecting you, about seeing your strength, about... He stopped, swallowed. The part about every day giving me more reasons. She turned to face him, and her expression was devastated. This was supposed to be simple. I know. We were supposed to keep it professional, transactional. We weren't supposed to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Feel something? Yes. The word came out broken. Because feeling something makes it real, and if it's real, then I can lose it, and I don't know how to survive losing something real. Ethan crossed to her, stood close enough to see the fear in her eyes. You're not going to lose it. You don't know that. The contract ends in 8 months. You'll take Lily and leave. Build a real life somewhere else. And I'll go back to being alone. That was the deal. Deals can change. Can they? Or will we just keep pretending until we don't know who we really are anymore? She shook her head. I can't do this, Ethan. I can't let this become real. Because when it ends, and it will end, it'll destroy me. What if it doesn't end? Everything ends. My father taught me that. Love ends. Loyalty ends. The only thing that lasts is what you build for yourself. She stepped back, rebuilding her walls in real time. We survived the board meeting. That's what matters. Marcus is out. The company is secure. We can go back to the arrangement. Can we? Just pretend today didn't happen? Pretend I didn't mean what I said? Yes, because the alternative is too dangerous. Her voice was firm now, decided. Thank you for your help today. You performed admirably. But let's not confuse performance with reality. She walked out before he could argue. Ethan stood alone in the empty boardroom, his heart pounding, and realized something terrible. He'd fallen in love with her. Somewhere between the contract signing and the board meeting, between the practice dances and the unguarded moments, he'd stopped performing and started feeling. And she was right. It was dangerous. Because contracts ended, arrangements dissolved, and 8 months from now he'd have to walk away from the woman he'd accidentally learned to love. His phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. Lily's pre-op appointment tomorrow at 9 a.m. Surgery Monday as scheduled. Monday, 2 days away. The thing he'd sold himself to achieve. His daughter would get her transplant. She would live. That's what mattered. That's what all of this was for. So why did it suddenly feel like he was losing something more important than what he was gaining? That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the day over and over. The board meeting, his testimony, the way Vivian had looked at him when he told the truth, the way she'd shut down afterward, terrified of what honesty meant. At 2 a.m., he heard her door open, footsteps in the hallway, the soft sound of the balcony door sliding. He found her outside, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the city lights. She didn't look surprised to see him. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. No. The surgery is Monday. I know. Are you scared? The honest question deserved an honest answer. Terrified. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've arranged for the best surgical team, called in favors, made sure Lily gets everything she needs. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's part of the arrangement. But her voice was soft, lacking conviction. Ethan stood beside her, close but not touching. At the board meeting, when I said I was learning reasons, don't. I need to say this. Why? So it becomes real, so we can't take it back? She turned to face him, and her eyes were wet. I don't know how to do this, Ethan. The feeling thing. My father trained it out of me. Made me believe that caring about people made you weak, vulnerable, easy to hurt. Maybe it does, but maybe it also makes you human. I don't want to be human. Human means breakable. A tear escaped, ran down her cheek. When you and Lily leave in 8 months, I'll survive it. I've survived everything else, but only if I don't let this become real. What if I don't want to leave? The words hung between them, dangerous and impossible. You have to, Vivian whispered. That's the deal. That's what we agreed to. Deals can be renegotiated. Not this one, because if we try to make this real, if we try to build something permanent out of a lie, her voice broke. It'll fail. And when it fails, it'll hurt worse than anything my father ever did to me. Ethan reached out slowly, wiped the tear from her cheek with his thumb. She closed her eyes at the touch, leaned into it for just a moment before pulling away. I should go to bed, she said. Big day Monday. Vivian, Please don't make this harder than it already is. She looked at him one more time, and in her eyes was everything she couldn't say. Want, fear, longing, regret. Good night, Ethan. She went inside, closed the door gently. Ethan stood on the balcony alone, the city sprawling before him, and felt the weight of 8 months pressing down on his chest. 8 months until this ended. Until he had to choose between honoring a contract and following his heart. 8 months to figure out if what they'd built from lies could ever become something true. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Lily was scared but trying to be brave, holding Ethan's hand with a grip that was almost painful as they walked through the hospital corridors. Vivian had arrived separately, meeting them outside the surgical wing. She wore jeans and a sweater, the most casual he'd ever seen her, and somehow looked more vulnerable than in all her expensive armor. "Hey, Lily," Vivian said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous, but Daddy says the doctors are really good." "They are. The best. I made sure of it." Vivian knelt down to Lily's level. "You're very brave. Braver than most adults I know." "Are you scared too?" The question seemed to surprise Vivian. "Yes, but being scared doesn't mean things won't be okay. Sometimes it just means we care very much about the outcome." Lily hugged her suddenly, fiercely. Vivian's eyes went wide and she looked at Ethan helplessly over Lily's shoulder. He nodded encouragement. Slowly, Vivian's arms came up, wrapped around the little girl. "Thank you for helping my daddy," Lily whispered. "He's been so sad for so long, but he smiles more now, since you." Vivian's face crumpled. She held Lily tighter. The surgical team arrived to take Lily back. Ethan kissed his daughter's forehead, whispered promises he prayed he could keep. Then she was gone, wheeled through double doors into a room he couldn't follow. The waiting room was sterile and cold. Ethan and Vivian sat side by side, not talking, not touching, just existing in the terrible space of not knowing. Hours crawled by. 3, 4, 5. Ethan's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Vivian noticed, reached over, took his hand in hers, squeezed once. They stayed that way, hands linked, silence heavy, until the surgeon finally emerged, tired but smiling. The transplant was successful. Lily's in recovery. She did beautifully. The relief hit Ethan like a physical force. He bent forward, hands over his face, and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She was going to live. His daughter was going to live. Vivian's hand tightened on his shoulder. When he finally looked up, she was crying too. Silent tears tracking down her face, her usual control completely shattered. "She's okay," Ethan whispered. "She's actually okay." "She's okay," Vivian echoed. And for one perfect moment, the contract didn't matter. The lies didn't matter. The 8 months didn't matter. All that mattered was that they'd saved a little girl's life, together. They let Ethan see Lily 30 minutes later. She was small and pale against the white hospital sheets, tubes and monitors tracking every breath, every heartbeat. But her eyes opened when he took her hand and she smiled weakly. "Hi, Daddy." "Hi, baby." His voice cracked. "How do you feel?" "Tired, and it hurts a little, but the nurses said that's normal." She squeezed his fingers with surprising strength. "Did it work? Am I going to get better?" "Yes, sweetheart, you're going to get better." "Good, because I want to go to the zoo and learn to ride a bike and maybe get a dog." Her eyelids were already drooping, medication pulling her back under. "Is Vivian still here?" "She's in the waiting room." "Tell her thank you for everything. Tell her..." Lily's words slurred as sleep took her. "Tell her she's family now." Ethan sat with his daughter until the nurses gently insisted he let her rest. He walked back to the waiting room in a daze, exhausted and relieved and terrified all at once. The surgery was successful, but recovery would be long. Months of careful monitoring, medication, physical therapy, learning to live with a transplanted organ that her body might reject at any moment. But she had a chance now. A real chance. That was more than he'd had 3 months ago. Vivian stood by the windows, still there despite the late hour. She turned when she heard him approach. "She's sleeping," Ethan said, "but she's okay. She wanted me to tell you thank you." She doesn't need to thank me. She said, "You're family now." Something flickered across Vivian's face, longing mixed with fear. "Ethan, about what I said on the balcony, you were scared. I understand." "No, you don't. Because I wasn't just scared of losing you. I was scared of what it means that I care if I lose you." She wrapped her arms around herself. "My whole life, I've measured success by what I could control. The company, my reputation, my emotions. But you and Lily, I can't control what I feel about you, and that terrifies me more than anything Marcus could threaten. So what do we do?" "I don't know. The contract says 8 more months. After that, you're free to go. Build the life you actually want, not the one you were forced into." "What if the life I want includes you?" "You can't know that. Not yet. We're still living the performance, still trapped in circumstances." She finally met his eyes. "After the year is up, if you still feel this way, if it's not just gratitude or convenience or trauma bonding, then we can talk about making it real. But until then, let's just focus on getting Lily healthy." It wasn't what Ethan wanted to hear, but maybe it was what they needed. Time to separate performance from reality. Space to figure out who they were when the pressure was off. "Okay," he said quietly, 8 more months. Then we reassess." 8 more months, she agreed, but neither of them moved. They stood in the hospital waiting room, caught between what was and what might be, until finally Vivian stepped forward and hugged him, just held him, her face pressed against his shoulder, and let herself be human for a moment. "Your daughter's going to be okay," she whispered. "That's what matters." "Thank you," Ethan said into her hair, "for all of it, the surgery, the contract, giving us a chance when we had none. You would have found another way." "No, I wouldn't have. You saved her life." "We saved her life," Vivian corrected. "Together." The next 3 weeks were a blur of hospital visits, medication schedules, and careful optimism. Lily's body accepted the transplant. Her color came back. Her energy returned in small increments. The doctors were cautiously pleased, talking about discharge dates and home care protocols. Ethan split his time between the hospital and the penthouse, barely sleeping, running on adrenaline and coffee. Vivian worked from Lily's hospital room half the time, laptop balanced on her knees, fielding calls and emails while keeping Lily entertained with stories about the business world that the girl found endlessly fascinating. "So you're like the queen of the company?" Lily asked one afternoon, propped up in bed drawing pictures. "Something like that," Vivian said. "And nobody can tell you what to do?" "Lots of people try. I just don't listen to most of them." Vivian glanced at the drawing Lily was working on. "What are you making?" "A picture of our family, see? There's Daddy, and there's me, and there's you." Lily pointed to 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. "And there's the dog we're going to get." "We haven't discussed getting a dog." "But we should. Every family needs a dog. That's what Mrs. Chen says." Lily added elaborate details to the dog, spots and a tail and what might have been a smile. "Do you like dogs?" "I've never had one. My father didn't believe in pets, said they were distractions." "That's sad. Dogs are the best. They love you no matter what, even when you're grumpy or scared or sad." Lily looked up seriously. "Like how Daddy loves me even when I'm sick, and how you love Daddy even when he's being stubborn." Vivian's expression went carefully blank. "What makes you think I love your father?" "Because you look at him the way Mommy used to, like he's the most important person in the world, and you hold his hand when you think I'm not looking." Lily went back to her drawing. "It's okay. I like that you love him. He was lonely before you." Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds came uncomfortable truths. Vivian caught Ethan's eye across the room. He'd been pretending to read, but had clearly heard every word. He raised his eyebrows in a question she couldn't answer. "Lily," Vivian said carefully, "your dad and I have a complicated relationship. It's not as simple as love is never simple. That's what Mommy told me." Lily finished her drawing, held it up proudly. "But it's still real, even when it's hard." She had no idea how right she was. Marcus didn't give up. Even removed from the company, he continued his campaign from the outside. Stories started appearing in business magazines questioning the legitimacy of Vivian's marriage. Anonymous sources suggesting financial impropriety. Social media posts from accounts that couldn't be traced back to him but had his fingerprints all over them. The board held firm. Robert and the attorneys created such a solid legal wall that Marcus couldn't find cracks. But the whispers persisted, the speculation, the judgment. Ethan learned to ignore it, or at least pretend to. What people thought didn't matter as much as what was actually true. And the truth was complicated in ways gossip couldn't capture. Lily was discharged from the hospital 2 days before Thanksgiving. Coming home felt surreal, carrying her through the penthouse doors, watching her eyes light up at being in her own room again. Mrs. Chen cried. The building staff applauded. Even James, the driver, teared up a little. That night, they ate dinner together. Ethan, Vivian, and Lily. At the dining table that usually sat empty. Takeout from Lily's favorite restaurant, nothing fancy. Just 3 people sharing a meal, grateful to be in the same space. Can we do something for Thanksgiving? Lily asked. Like a real family? Ethan glanced at Vivian, uncertain. They'd never discussed holidays, never planned for the kinds of things normal families did. What did you have in mind? Vivian asked. Cooking, together, like Mommy used to do. She'd make this really good stuffing and Daddy would help with the turkey, and I'd make place cards for everyone. Lily's eyes were bright with memory and hope. Could we do that? I don't cook, Vivian said. I mean, beyond coffee, I'm useless in a kitchen. That's okay. We'll teach you. Lily grinned. It'll be fun. And Mrs. Chen can come. And maybe Robert, he's always nice to me when he visits. That's a lot of people. That's what makes it a family dinner. Lots of people who care about each other. Lily reached across the table, took both their hands. Please, I want to have one good Thanksgiving, just one, where we're all together and nobody's sick or sad or scared. How could they say no to that? Thanksgiving turned out to be chaotic and imperfect and strangely wonderful. Mrs. Chen arrived early to supervise, which mostly meant criticizing everything Ethan did while praising Lily's minimal contributions. Robert brought wine that probably cost more than furniture and told stories about Richard Cross that made Vivian laugh in a way Ethan had never heard before. Unguarded and genuine. Vivian attempted to make mashed potatoes and somehow managed to both burn them and leave them lumpy. She stared at the pot like it had personally betrayed her. How is this even possible? She demanded. You're overthinking it, Ethan said, trying not to laugh. It's just potatoes, butter, and milk. I followed the recipe exactly. Maybe that's the problem. Cooking isn't like business. You can't just execute a plan. You have to feel it. Feel potatoes? That's ridiculous. But she was smiling a little, some of her usual control slipping away. Here. He stepped behind her, put his hands over hers on the masher. Like this. Gentle pressure. Let the heat do the work. They stood that way for a moment, his chest against her back, their hands moving together. Vivian turned her head slightly, and her cheek was inches from his. This is dangerous, she murmured. It's just potatoes. You know what I mean? He did. But for once, he didn't step back, didn't create distance, just stayed close and helped her finish the mashed potatoes that turned out reasonably edible despite her best efforts to sabotage them. Dinner was loud and warm, the kind of meal where everyone talked over each other and laughed too much. Lily presided over the table like a tiny queen, making sure everyone had enough food, sharing stories about the hospital nurses, asking Robert about his most interesting legal cases. She's a natural hostess, Robert observed. Reminds me of your mother at that age, Vivian, before life made her hard. My mother was never soft, Vivian said. You'd be surprised. When she first married your father, she had dreams, wanted to open an art gallery, support emerging artists. Richard convinced her it was frivolous, that her job was to support him, not pursue her own passions. Robert took a sip of wine. I've often wondered what would have happened if she'd said no, chosen her own path. She chose security over happiness. That's what people do, is it? Or is that what people who are afraid of disappointment do? Robert looked between Ethan and Vivian. Sometimes the scariest thing is admitting you want something beyond survival, that you deserve more than just getting through. The comment hung in the air, pointed and deliberate. Vivian didn't respond, but Ethan saw her hand tighten around her fork. After dinner, while the adults cleaned up, Lily fell asleep on the couch, exhausted but content. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in, spent a moment just watching her breathe. The scar from the surgery was healing well. Her color was good. She looked like a child again, not a patient. "Thank you," he whispered to Sarah, to the universe, to whatever forces had conspired to keep his daughter alive. "Thank you for giving her back to me." When he returned to the living room, Robert and Mrs. Chen had gone. Vivian stood by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, holding a glass of wine. "Today was good," she said without turning around. "Yeah, it was." Lily seemed happy. "She was. Is." Ethan walked over, stood beside her. "Thank you for doing this. I know it was outside your comfort zone. Everything about this year has been outside my comfort zone." She turned to face him. "I've been thinking about what Robert said, about my mother choosing security over happiness." "What about it?" "I've done the same thing my entire life, built walls, kept people at a distance, measured every relationship by how it benefited the company." She set down her wine glass. "But that's not living. That's just existing, protecting yourself from pain by refusing to feel anything." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere in the last 3 months, I stopped just existing. Somewhere between dancing in this living room and braiding Lily's hair and helping you make terrible mashed potatoes, I started living." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And it terrifies me, because living means you can lose things. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to survive losing this." Ethan's heart was pounding. "You won't lose it, not if we don't let it end." "The contract, screw the contract. I'm not talking about obligations or agreements or business arrangements. I'm talking about this, us, what we've actually become when we stopped pretending." He took her hands. "I love you, Vivian. Not the CEO, not the woman who saved my daughter. You, the person who tries too hard at everything, who drinks her coffee black because adding things feels like weakness, who showed me a photograph of the girl she used to be because she wanted me to know that version existed." Tears were streaming down her face now. "You can't love me. You don't even really know me. I know you well enough to know I want to learn the rest, to spend whatever time you'll give me figuring out all the pieces you've hidden away." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "I know the contract says 8 more months, and if you need that time to be sure, I'll wait. But Vivian, I'm already sure. I have been since that night you danced with me and told me about wanting to be a photographer. That was weeks ago. I know. You should have said something. You weren't ready to hear it. Maybe you're still not ready." He let his hands drop. "But I needed you to know, before we spend 8 more months pretending this is just business." Vivian stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "If I let this be real, if I let myself love you back and it fails, it will destroy me. Completely. I won't recover from it." "Then we won't let it fail." "You can't promise that. Nobody can promise that." "You're right. I can't promise forever, but I can promise I'll fight for this. For us. For the family we're accidentally building." He paused. "Unless you don't feel the same way. If this really is just convenient for you." She kissed him. Hard, desperate, like she was trying to communicate everything she couldn't say. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, felt her trembling against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vivian pressed her forehead to his. "I'm so scared," she whispered. "I know. Me too. But I love you. I think I have since you stood up to Marcus in that board meeting and told the truth about everything." She laughed shakily. "So stupid. Falling in love during a fake marriage. Who does that? People who were supposed to find each other all along." "You think we were supposed to find each other?" "I think you needed someone who'd seen rock bottom and climbed back up. And I needed someone who understood what it meant to do anything to protect what matters." Ethan kissed her forehead. "We found each other in the worst circumstances. But maybe that's what makes it real." "So what do we do now? Renegotiate the contract?" "We burn the contract. Start over. Build something that doesn't have an expiration date." "That's simple?" "That's simple. If you want it." Vivian pulled back slightly, looked at him with those storm gray eyes that had first seemed so cold, and now just looked cautious, hopeful, terrified. "I want it," she said finally. I want you, and Lily, and this strange, imperfect family we've made out of necessity and desperation and love, Ethan finished. We can say it now. It's allowed. Love, she repeated, testing the word. God, I'm bad at this, at the emotional thing, the vulnerability thing. You're doing fine. I burned the mashed potatoes. They were edible, mostly. He grinned. We'll work on it. We have time now. No more counting down months. Just time. She kissed him again, softer this time, sweet and tentative and full of promise. I should tell you something, Vivian said against his lips. I started the paperwork last week to make Lily my legal dependent. Not just for insurance, for everything. If something happens to you, which it won't, but if it does, she'll be taken care of. Protected. Mine. Ethan's throat tightened. You did that? Of course I did. She's family. That's what Lily said, and she was right. Vivian stepped back, suddenly businesslike, even with tears still on her face. Also, I may have started looking at houses, ones with yards, because apparently we're getting a dog. We are? Lily's very persuasive, and she's right. Every family needs a dog. Mrs. Chen is already showing me pictures of golden retrievers. She shook her head. I'm running a multi-billion-dollar company, and I'm looking at puppy photos. What have you done to me? Made you human? Terrifying. But she was smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached her eyes and made her look like that girl in the photograph, young and hopeful and unafraid of dreams. The next morning, Ethan woke to find Lily standing beside his bed, grinning. Daddy, Vivian's making breakfast. She is? That seemed unlikely. Well, trying to make breakfast. There's a lot of smoke, but she said she wanted to do something nice for us, so I'm helping. Lily grabbed his hand. Come on. He followed her to the kitchen where Vivian stood at the stove, hair pulled back, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the CEO," spatula in hand, staring at a pan of what might have been eggs. They're supposed to be scrambled, she said defensively when she saw him. But they're more chunked? It's the thought that counts, Ethan said, trying not to laugh. Don't patronize me. I'm terrible at this and we both know it. But she was smiling a little. Lily, can you grab the toast? They ate terrible eggs and slightly burnt toast together, and it was perfect. After breakfast, while Vivian dealt with work calls, Ethan and Lily sat on the balcony wrapped in blankets. Daddy? Lily's voice was small. Are you and Vivian going to stay married? Yeah, baby, we are. Because you have to, or because you want to? Because we want to, both of us. Good. I like her. She tries really hard even when things are difficult, like you. Lily leaned against him. I think Mommy would like her too. They both make you smile. I think you're right. And Daddy, I'm glad we moved here. I know it was scary and different, but I like our new family. Our new family. The word settled something in Ethan's chest that had been restless for months. They had built something real from the wreckage, something good. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The holidays passed in a blur of recovery and adjustment. Lily grew stronger every day, her body accepting the transplant with minimal complications. By Christmas, she was running around the penthouse, driving Mrs. Chen crazy with her energy, begging for the dog they'd promised. They found her on a Saturday in January, a golden retriever puppy with oversized paws and a tail that never stopped wagging. Lily named her Hope, which was perfect. Too perfect. Ethan cried a little when Lily explained that Hope was what had kept them going through the hard times, and now they had her for real. Marcus made one final attempt in February, filing a lawsuit claiming the marriage had been fraudulent from the start. His lawyers were expensive and aggressive, but they had nothing concrete. The marriage was legal. The board had confirmed it. Lily's medical records proved genuine need, not opportunism. And most importantly, Ethan and Vivian's relationship had evolved into something undeniably real. The case was dismissed within weeks. Marcus, finally defeated, retreated to whatever life he'd built in exile from the family company. Eleanor, surprisingly, took Vivian's side in the end. You proved me wrong, she told her daughter over lunch one afternoon. I thought you were making a mistake, but you found something I never had, A partner who chose you for who you are, not what you represent. He didn't choose me, Vivian corrected. I bribed him into marrying me. But he stayed, and he fought for you. That's choosing. Eleanor paused. Your father loved me in his way, but he loved the company more. He loved the legacy more. You found someone who puts you first. That's rare. By spring, they'd bought the house Vivian had been looking at, a sprawling place in the suburbs with a yard for hope and a studio where Vivian was tentatively exploring photography again. Lily had her own room decorated exactly how she wanted it, full of colors and light, and the kind of joy that came from knowing you were safe. Ethan returned to engineering part-time, consulting for Cross Industries on sustainable building projects. It wasn't the career he'd lost, but it was something better. Work he believed in, building things that mattered. They hosted Thanksgiving again that year, but bigger. Robert and his husband, Mrs. Chen and her grandson, Sarah Mitchell and her partner, Amanda and her teenage daughter, even Catherine Sinclair, who'd become an unexpected friend of Vivian. Look at you, Catherine said, watching Vivian laugh at something Lily said. Actually happy. I never thought I'd see it. Neither did I, Vivian admitted. Turns out I just needed to stop trying to control everything and let life surprise me. How very un-CEO of you. I'm learning balance. Some things need control, others need trust. She glanced at Ethan across the room, caught his eye, smiled. Took me 36 years to figure that out. That night, after everyone had gone and Lily was asleep with Hope curled at her feet, Ethan and Vivian stood on their new porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Do you ever think about how we started? Vivian asked. That conversation in my office. The contract. How clinical it all was. Sometimes. Seems like a different life. It was a different life. We're different people now. She turned to face him. Better people, I think. You've made me better. You saved my daughter's life. You saved mine too, in a way. Gave me something to build toward instead of just surviving day to day. We saved each other. That's what partners do. She pulled him close, kissed him softly. I love you, Ethan Cole. I love you too, Vivian Cross Cole. She'd hyphenated her name 6 months ago, a small gesture that had meant everything, proof that she was choosing this, choosing them. Remember what I said that first night about this being just business? Vivian's voice was quiet. I was so wrong. This is the least business transaction I've ever been part of. This is messy and complicated and terrifying and real. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's everything. She rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for being stubborn enough to fall in love with me despite my best efforts to prevent it. Thank you for being brave enough to let me. They stood together in the quiet evening, no longer counting down months or measuring obligations. Just two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and built something that would last. Inside the house, Lily called out that Hope had stolen her stuffed animal again. They laughed and went to referee, stepping into the warm light of their home, their family, their real life built from fake beginnings. Sometimes the strongest love starts with a contract signed in desperation. Sometimes family is chosen rather than given. Sometimes the most honest relationships begin with lies that transform into truth. And sometimes when you're desperate enough to make a deal with someone equally desperate, you find exactly what you didn't know you were looking for. 3 years later, they stood in the same courthouse where they'd first married. But this time they weren't there for legal documents or fraudulent ceremonies. They were renewing their vows with Lily, now 10 and healthy and radiant, as their maid of honor, Hope's collar decorated with flowers, and a room full of people who'd watched them build something real from nothing. Do you, Vivian, take Ethan to be your husband? Again, officially. For real this time. I do. I really, really do. And do you, Ethan, take Vivian to be your wife without any contracts or obligations or time limits? I do. Forever this time. They kissed while Lily cheered and Hope barked, and everyone who doubted them in the beginning watched them prove that sometimes the most unlikely stories have the happiest endings, because they'd learned the truth that had been there all along. You can't fake love forever. Eventually, you're either faking or you're loving, and they'd stopped faking a long time ago. "What are you thinking?" Vivian asked later at the reception they'd planned in their backyard. "That I'd make the same deal again, every time, in every life." Ethan pulled her close, even knowing how terrifying it would be, how hard, how much it would change me. "Because of Lily? Because of you, both of you. This whole strange, perfect family we made out of desperation and luck and refusing to give up." He kissed her forehead. "I spent years thinking I'd lost my chance at happiness when Sarah died. Turns out I just had to lose everything else first to find it again." Heavy thoughts for a party. True thoughts for a celebration. He spun her gently, the way they'd practiced that first night in the penthouse when they were still pretending. "We made it, Vivian. Against every odd, we actually made it." "We did," she agreed. "And we're going to keep making it, every day, for as long as we get." Lily ran up, breathless from dancing. "Can we cut the cake now? Hope is eyeing it, and I don't trust her around frosting." They cut the cake together, the three of them, while cameras flashed and friends laughed and life went on in all its messy, imperfect glory. And later that night, when everything was quiet and Lily was asleep and Hope was snoring at the foot of their bed, Ethan and Vivian lay in the dark, hands linked between them. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one. You? Just that I didn't find you sooner. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to, when we needed each other most." She squeezed his hand. "Everything before was just preparation for this." "For what?" "For learning that the best things in life aren't the ones you plan for. They're the ones that ambush you in your darkest moments and refuse to let go." She turned to face him. "You ambushed me, Ethan Cole. You ambushed me first, Vivian Cross-Cole. Offered me a deal I couldn't refuse and changed my entire life. Best deal I ever made. Best deal we ever made," he corrected. And in the quiet of their home, surrounded by proof that love could grow from the strangest soil, they fell asleep together. Not as partners in a business arrangement, not as two desperate people clinging to survival, but as husband and wife, father and mother. Two people who'd learned that sometimes you have to sell your soul to save it, and sometimes the person who buys it gives it back transformed into something better than it was before. The contract that had brought them together was long since shredded, burned, forgotten. What they had now wasn't built on paper or obligation. It was built on choice, on showing up every day, on learning to be brave enough to be vulnerable, on proving that family isn't just blood, it's who you'd fight for, who you'd sacrifice for, who you'd choose again and again and again. They'd started with a lie and built a truth, started with necessity and found love, started as strangers and became family. And in the end, that's all anyone can hope for, to be seen, to be chosen, to matter to someone enough that they'll stand beside you when the world tries to tear you apart. Ethan and Vivian had found that. Against all odds, despite all obstacles, through every doubt and fear and moment of almost giving up, they'd found each other, and they'd held on. And that made every desperate deal, every terrifying risk, every impossible choice worth it. Because love, real love, chosen love, fought for love, was worth everything, even a year of pretending, even facing down Marcus and the board and the world's judgment, even believing in something that seemed impossible, especially believing in something impossible. Because sometimes the impossible things are the only ones worth believing in, and they'd proven it was true, together.